Hey, good evening, guys. I am with my friends, co-researcher, filmmaker, DJ Detonator, Nelson, and of course, formerly of We Are Change LA, Ed Brotherton. Guys, good evening.
Good
How
evening,
you doing,
Adam.
man?
What's up, man? Everybody's going to want to know what's going on today. So yesterday, there was a interview that was conducted by Richard Gage. He's now, formerly of Architects and Engineers, now head of the organization. He's now created 9/11 Unleashed. He's done a couple of podcasts on YouTube, and his recent interview that he done yesterday is with the filmmaker Art Olivier. And I forgot the name of the film. What was the name of that film, Nelson?
Operation Terror.
Operation Terror.
Operation Terror. Well, the nature of the film basically is about the conspiracy, the fringe conspiracies of 9/11. And one of them is about Shankville and about no plane crashing into the field. And that I think it was a missile, he's saying, that a missile hit the field.
Oh, it was drones. It was plane swaps and
It was
drones.
a plane swap. I
Yeah,
haven't seen that
or it's
film in
swapped
years.
and it's a mock crash site somehow.
Right. Okay. But that's not the point. Now, the interview was about an hour and 50 minutes long, but we're not going to play the whole thing. What we're going to play is an 11-minute clip. And in this clip, I addressed a question to Richard Gage. And the question goes like this. If there are no hijackers on any of these planes, by default, that means the CIA, the NSA, the Israeli Mossad, and the Saudi GID, these are the intelligence agencies who are monitoring the hijackers, don't exist. And Art Olivier answered first, and he gave a very awkward answer as to the operations headed by those specific agencies. And he basically talked about the FBI and Zacharias Moussaoui and how other Arabs were basically patsies. Well,
He said that all the agencies work together.
right.
Yeah, that was the
that's
other thing.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. And we're going to address that in a minute too, about that in the interview. But also he made this comment. And this is the comment which made us want to respond. In that, Richard Gage said to me that the 9/11 truth movement doesn't hinge on the fact that hijackers were in control of the planes. But that's not the big point. The big point is this. The 9/11 truth movement also doesn't hinge on the fact that there were even hijackers on these planes. So what he is saying is that he believes none of these planes on 9/11 were hijacked. Now, this is in direct contradiction to a huge conference he just had this weekend, which was 9/11 Con, which was a 12-hour conference of three of the leading proponents
It was
of
10 hours, but who's counting?
10.
Yeah.
Was it 10 hours?
Yeah.
Well, it seemed like 12, but 10 hours where you had three proponents who considered three different fringe conspiracies. And at the end, you had David Chandler, Wayne Costi bringing actual evidence of a plane crash in Pentagon.
There was
And
four,
I don't know-
but we forget about Dario Masan.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was
well,
four
like-
competing theories. One was only the supporting the plane hitting. And the three competing theories is Mission, the classic missile guy, the guy who started the whole thing. That Barbara Honegger, connected to the hip to Richard Gage with her different plane. We couldn't even tell. And then obviously the fans of Citizens Investigation Team, Craig McKee and Adam Ruff, rather than the actual researchers, filmmakers of CIT. Supporting the flyover theory and that the plane even went a different path on the other side of the gas station.
Yeah, you know what? I made the mistake of putting Chandler and Costi in that group. They're the opposite. That's right. They were saved at the end, so they were the opposite of them proving a plane in the Pentagon.
Yes, but
I don't know any better, so maybe I'll lean on you guys for a bit. Was there a vote taken on that about that conference?
It seemed like there was through the eventee thing, and when I was paying attention to it didn't seem like there was a lot of people watching. But
I think they had 300 or something like that.
Okay. They had it was like 50-50 between it was like Gay and it was like Chandler and Coste, tying with, believe it or not, Craig McKee. I was like, that was just like wow, So they're outdoing Mission and outdoing Barbara Honegger.
Wow, and I assumed Honegger won.
I don't know how.
I don't know how either.
Right, I me neither. I just heard that she won because she
Yeah.
actually was reading some votes at the end, and she basically said that she got 86% or something. Like maybe I
Oh,
read that
when
wrong.
did
or
she
something.
say that? When did she say that? Did she say that?
It's near the end.
Oh, okay.
It's
I
right
didn't
near
catch her
the end,
saying
about
that.
30 minutes right before the end. She actually is reading off something. I don't know what she was reading. I said, oh, that's the votes, I think.
Well, then that would mean they have that that many people don't buy the planting the light poles.
I agree.
That's
Right,
a progress.
Right.
Because that's an embarrassing thing to believe. I'll tell you, planted light poles.
Yeah, it's an absurd notion. But
Yes.
but yeah, in this video, in this response video, what we're going to do is we're going to address the points that Richard Gage made about what he said to me, and also what Olivier said about Flight 93 in Shanksville. So, like I said, it's not a long video, it's 11 minutes. So we're basically going to spend about 45, maybe 50 minutes discussing, and we're not going to use ad hominem attacks. We're just going to address the points raised in the video, and we're going to refute them with factual evidence based on the physical and technical evidence that was left behind in the crash scene at the Shanksville. And of course, we're going to elucidate the best we can why Richard Gage's stance regarding hijackers is a big mistake on his part. So if you're ready,
and real quick, his quote was more along the lines of, the truth movement does not need hijackers in order to prove an inside job. That was his main quote.
Oh, well, right.
Yeah. So just to be clear, I want to make sure the audience knows that.
Right. So what I'm going to do is we'll play the video, and then if you want me to stop, I'll stop. And
there might be a few part times we may want to just to repeat the audacity. Audacity of it, because yeah.
Absolutely. You just let me know when you want. I'll play right now.
All right. This is from Adam. He says, if there are no hijackers on planes, that means the CIA, NSA, and the Israeli Mossad on the Saudi and the Saudis were not monitoring the hijackers. So who do we blame for 9/11?
Art, I'll let you take that first, and I've got some comments on that one.
Yeah, so intelligence agencies. So it was, from my research, all intelligence agencies work together. And so I think, in the movie, of course, we have the CIA takes the lead role in the 9/11 attacks. We know that the FBI was a little bit involved. One of the scenes that we have in the movie was when the FBI agents in Minnesota started getting suspicious of this, Zacharias Moussaoui, and they started making connections into some of the other terrorist attacks, and they didn't want, the FBI headquarters didn't want Zacharias Moussaoui to be arrested. And so the head of the anti-terrorism group out of Washington, D.C. gave the agents in Minnesota direct orders not to arrest Zacharias Moussaoui, and they did it anyway. And so after he was arrested, the FBI wouldn't allow the agents or anybody else to look at Zacharias Moussaoui's laptop. They were afraid that that might lead them to the other terrorists that were, the patsies that were going to be involved in 9/11. So, we do have evidence of intelligence agencies being involved.
Okay, I want to stop right there because then Richard Gage makes his point. And if you guys want to answer that too, what we'll do is we'll each go first, and then the next person will go next, if that's all right.
I'd rather you just go first, Adam.
Okay, no problem. Okay, there's some things to unpack here. One, this is basically Olivier saying that Zacharias Moussaoui was actually arrested. He was actually detained on immigration charges. And this, thanks, by the way, Sean, he actually posted that in the messenger the other night, and I totally forgot about that. It's right. But he wasn't actually arrested. So what happened was Moussaoui was detained by Harry Samet because there was, Zacharias Moussaoui was actually calling a flight school in Minnesota about wanting to take classes, but he was asking very peculiar questions about how to fly the plane and not land the plane, how to turn off the oxygen tanks. So there was a lot of questions that really didn't jive with the instructors. So one of the people who called the FBI was Clarence Prevost, and he actually called Minneapolis headquarters. And what they did was they opened an investigation into Zacharias Moussaoui, and they knew he was staying at this hotel with another individual named Hussein Al-Attas. And Hussein Al-Attas was living with Zacharias Moussaoui, and they both traveled. Well, Hussein Al-Attas came from Oklahoma, and Zacharias Moussaoui flew from Germany into the United States. And they basically were staying at this hotel. I think, what was it? An Economy Inn, I think. And the FBI went to visit them, and they weren't in trouble. They just wanted to ask questions. And so they separated Moussaoui from Hussein Al-Attas, and Hussein Al-Attas said to the one agent that Zacharias Moussaoui is anti-Western. He wants to fly planes, but he doesn't want to land them because he thinks America should take, should be, that they wanted to conduct terrorist attacks against the United States for what they were doing in the Middle East. And so now the agent's like, wow, what have we got here? So they detained them. And because they detained them, they had, I think, 72 hours to hold them longer. So they're trying to look through their possessions, but they can't because they need a FISA warrant. A FISA warrant is for foreign nationals. And this is a foreign warrant, not like a regular warrant for a regular US citizen. So when they were trying to file a FISA warrant through the radical fundamentalist unit in Minnesota, they were basically arguing over the minute details of certain words that meant two different things between the two different units, which is basically petty stuff when you think about it. And Art Olivier is actually alluding later on that he thinks that this is the radical fundamentalist unit was basically trying to push Zacharias Moussaoui out of an arrest. But that wasn't the case at all. They wanted to get a FISA warrant to look through his belongings, his laptop and his possessions in his room, but they couldn't do it without getting an approval from a judge. On top of this, Art Olivier basically sidestepped my question. And basically, he actually says something really ludicrous, that the intelligence agencies work together. Now, me and Ed were scoffing at this the other day because this was the main problem for 9/11, was that none of the agencies were working in accordance with one another. The NSA wasn't sharing all their information with the CIA or the FBI, and the CIA wasn't sharing all their information with the NSA or the FBI or the State Department. So nobody was working with one another here. The FBI was doing their own investigation at the behest of their own investigation, which was lacking behind the CIA and the NSA because they didn't have the thorough technicalities that both agencies had. Manpower for the CIA, signals intelligence data for the NSA. So the FBI is basically almost winging it at this point, doing real flatfoot work, unlike the two agencies that had an enormous amount of financial growth between the two agencies. So they had a lot of money to spend regarding manpower and like listening devices,
technological resources.
Yeah, all this stuff that the FBI couldn't afford at the time. And meanwhile, later on, these agencies complained that they didn't have the manpower. Meanwhile, they collected an enormous amount of data, enormous, right? And now Art Olivier is basically saying is that these agencies are working together, and then goes off on a tangent about Moussaoui, missing my point entirely. I'm saying to Richard Gage that all of those intelligence agencies I just named were following and monitoring and assisting who? The hijackers, not Moussaoui. He wasn't part of the original, he was part of the original hijacking team, but then demoted to the second wave of attacks that Nelson covers in his films about 9/13. So what happened was that all these agencies and their operations thereof that happened years prior. I mean, the NSA had a wiretap on bin Laden's phone from 1992 to 1998. They had a wiretap on a Al Qaeda communications hub in Yemen from 1996 to 2001. The CIA was running human intelligence on the Yemen hub from 1996 to 2001. The Israelis, the Saudis, who were monitoring who? The hijackers inside the United States.
Yeah,
The Israelis had two rings, moving front companies and the art student ring. The art student ring was the biggest foreign intelligence ring in U.S. history. You had the Saudis out west monitoring Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi.
which is a legit one.
Right.
Yeah,
All of these operations don't exist because if there's no hijackers, these operations are following you. Nobody. That was my point. So I don't know why Art Olivier basically went on a tangent about Zacharias Moussaoui and claiming that all these agencies are working together with one another when that was the big complaint from the FBI. And I've interviewed Mark Rossini, who's an actual whistleblower, saying that the NSA told the CIA told them at Alex Station, the virtual station that was monitoring Al Qaeda, about two Al Qaeda operatives coming to the United States, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. The CIA told them, don't share that information with the FBI.
The news was talking about that on 9/12, 9/13. They were, and the way we knew about it, we were talking about one of the terrorists was involved in the USS Cole, was on one of these planes. That's
And-
you know.
Yeah, and let me
Flight 77.
and let me I want to speculate on the CIA's refusal to share that information with the FBI. You think about it, their CIA's jurisdiction is overseas. They're not allowed to conduct foreign operations or they're not allowed to conduct domestic operations. That jurisdiction belongs to the FBI. So when the two hijackers came into the United States, they became domestic. That became a domestic jurisdiction. The FBI needs to take over. The problem, and here's what I think happened: the CIA did not want to give that information to the FBI because they wanted to turn those two terrorists and make them informants, because there were still plenty of foreign terrorists and foreign terrorist cells and foreign intelligence related information connected to these two individuals. So because of that fact, CIA is probably looking at this going, hey, you know what? This isn't quite a domestic operation yet because they're still connected to these foreign entities. And we need them in order to turn them so we can collect more intelligence data from these foreign entities from these domestic now sources. That's probably why the CIA didn't turn them over to the FBI. I'm speculating on that, but that's my guess. And I think it's a darn good one. So there you go.
Right. If I could follow up with another speculation in much more nefarious light. Let's just say the CIA wanted the attacks to happen and that they needed these two guys to basically be involved with the hijacking of Flight 77. And why would that be important? Because the Saudis, and this is something I've covered in the last couple of days with the videos, now we have certain fact that the Saudi government was actually funding a Saudi consulate officer, Elmar al-Bayoumi, to give money to Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, who were involved with the hijacking of American Airlines Flight 77. And that flight crashed into the Pentagon. Now, when the flights 11 and 175 crashed in the World Trade Center, it wasn't an act of war. It was only an act of war when Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. That's why that flight, I think, is the most important of all four, because when 11 and 175 crashed in the World Trade Center, it was an act of terrorism, but it wasn't an act of war. It wasn't an act of war. So 77 was a much more important flight. And that's the reason why maybe there were 6 hijackers on that plane, to make sure that that wasn't taken over by the crew and the passengers.
And a good point to add.
Go ahead.
And a good point to add what Adam's saying about, like, wasn't an act of war until striking the Pentagon. Well, look what happened the first time they attacked the World Trade Center in 1993. Did we go to war with any country? No.
Right.
Go ahead, Ed.
And the reason why I bring up that speculative scenario that I raised is because when you take your information with 60 exhibits to the grand jury, and they actually start to investigate, and if the federal government has to bring in their argument, their rebuttal to that, they're going to raise a very similar argument that I just presented. They're going to raise that argument because they don't want to raise the argument that Adam is talking about. Because if they do that, then guess what happens? You have a foreign government, Saudi Arabia, financing terrorists in the United States who were the ones responsible for flying Flight 77 into the Pentagon, engaging in the act of war, which means Saudi Arabia is the one who is waging war on the United States.
Right. That's a great point that you raised that.
Basically.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad you brought up 93, Nelson, because yeah, even with 93, it wasn't even an act of war back then, but they still tried to blame Iraq anyway. And even with 9/11, that's exactly what they did. It took 4 hijackings
absolutely.
to do it, but they still blamed Iraq anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And they tried to retroactively, but that's a whole other story. Let's keep going.
Right. So this is now, I think we can all agree here is that the point was actually missed by Art Olivier in that regards, is that they're also throwing away a number of different conspiracies that are basically tied in with a bigger conspiracy involving much more people in the highest levels of government.
Yes.
Because like I said, if there's no hijackers, all these agencies don't exist, all these operations don't exist. So who are you blaming for 9/11? If you're going to say that the World Trade Center came down by demolition, okay, I'm with you there. Your only thing you're missing is a suspect. And
look at this moment. I mean, at this moment, the way that they're downplaying, this helps downplay when we look at the Oklahoma City, because there may be links with, and there is. We're not going to talk about them.
Right.
With going back with Zacharias Masali as far as where he was staying at. We know there are Middle Eastern links tied to the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995, and that's completely considered, a white nationalist, white militia, white Christian identity, whatever conspiracy. And that's a huge ordeal too. I mean, that's sloppy. You got to look at the area too.
Sure. And by the way, they also blame Iraq for that too as well. They tried.
Yeah, and they thank you.
Right.
There's a pattern there going on. Hello.
Exactly.
Thank you, Adam.
So now, all right, Art Olivier basically answered here. Now, this is going to be the essence of the videos, because Richard Gage actually, what he says here was really problematic to all three of us. Listen.
Well, yeah, that's like all over the place. And I was glad to see you. I didn't know that was an accurate historical part of the record that you included in your film regarding.
Yeah,
what
was interesting is
Sure, Ed.
All right, now this is an issue I have with the Richard's assessment here, because he's just giving it to him like that's an accurate record of the film, but there's no fact checking, there's no verifying, there's nothing. He just accepted it with blind faith, and so I don't know what Richard's doing here with respect to that, but it's not great. It's not a good look, if you know what I mean.
Right.
No, we're taking more issue with Richard throughout this whole thing than really Art Olivier, who, believe it or not, Ed and I and myself, we've met him. We actually know this guy. So,
and the thing is, Richard Gage basically does this throughout the video, where he's assuming that Art Olivier is absolutely correct here. And does this really? I take issue with this because I'm assuming Richard Gage is already agreeing with Art Olivier because he himself doesn't believe that they were hijackers or the phone calls are fake.
Yes,
I'm assuming
absolutely.
Right.
I mean, Art Olivier's movie Operation Terror is basically bringing the loose change conspiracy of 9/11 to life in a very poorly, made B movie. And that is what Richard's acknowledged. He's in here, the way he's responding, he's responding like a fan, that he's clearly watched the movie. So he's fine with it.
Right.
One thing I will do is give credit to Art for making the film, because it's so freaking hard. And he did it with very little money, and he actually made it look somewhat good with the amount of money he had.
Yeah.
I'm going to give him credit for that. So just FYI. So
yeah, but the problem,
but
it's true.
The subject, but the content is where I have an issue with.
Yeah, is the content we have the complete issue with. It's very simple, and I hope I am going to pass this to Art whether he likes it or not. But hopefully, obviously you'll hear this, but it's like, yeah, you made that film in a very early, awakening. I mean, you came into our We Are Change LA chapter very late. You weren't there during the Bush years. So, and we know you changed narrative later on, and that's because you read, Christopher Bolin. You got totally into Bolin. But you see, there's a problem here. Bolin's wrong on a lot of things because he has that same fantastical, no planer nonsense, because he shares his notoriety with Loose Change because of the nonsense with the engine, but anyways, you came and found that, but you didn't go back, and you haven't considered to make another film to maybe revise it and really rethink how you put the Israelis in here in your grand Masonic, Illuminati,
Illuminati-esque.
Jesuits. I mean, I've heard it all because I know what this guy thinks. And we've had email, constant Facebook, back and forth over the years. He's to the point where he's blocked me on Facebook. So, yeah, I appreciate the effort that, yeah, it does. It is a lot of work to make a film, to produce something and do all that. But you know what? You need to do something else, try something else. That's all I can say.
Right. Do you think he went into the film basically with the wrong mindset, suggesting that there was already, because we talked about this before, about a rush to prove that there was an inside job instead of a rush to prove that there was a crime at all?
It's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I just know that there was everybody's making films at the time, and so who knows? It was just he had the means to be able to make something a feature, and so I think he was genuine in his approach, but he was just like a lot of us were. A lot of us
Sure.
believed a lot of stuff, and I was one of them.
Yeah,
And then,
sorry, go ahead.
But he's now invested. That's the problem. He's now invested. He got a lot of money in that film, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, by the way, because he says in the film it's based on actual events. It's like, well, are they actual events, or were you mistaken on some of those events?
Yeah,
Because you find out years later that a lot of those events were not exactly as they were said to be. So. So do you make retractions? Do you take the responsibility and correct the record? What do you do at that point? But he's too invested. That's a lot of money you spend on a film, and hiring, I can't remember how many extras he said, 70 some extras that work for free. And, so it's like, how do you reconcile that and still save face? It's hard to do.
You're taking this to the grave. This is what you're going to be known for. You'll be part of this whole, what we like to call a sewer, that's going to go nowhere. This is going to be your legacy, Oliver, and it's going to be your legacy too, Richard Gage. It already is. But let's keep going.
The actor that played the FBI agent, Harry Samet, I think it is. He one of his lines was, we got to stop these terrorists before they run a plane in 747 into the World Trade Center. And
Actually, I just want to make a quick correction. An FBI agent didn't say that. It was the flight instructor, Clarence Prevost, who said that. The FBI didn't say that at all. So whether he was mistaken here or he's asserting something that is
off the top of his head.
That's not correct.
actor's like, I don't really want to say that because that's just so far fetched. And I go, no, you got to say it because that's actual testimony from the FBI agents.
No, it wasn't. It's Clarence Prevost who said that.
They said that.
Yeah, you did include that. So, so my comment on this is the 9/11 Truth Movement does not need authentic hijackers on the planes in control of the planes. It does not need hijackers on the planes who themselves may have been hijacked by remote controlled planes. It does not depend on any hijackers or anybody else for that matter on the planes that hit or missed their targets. There's plenty of proof of remote control technology, as you showed in your film, but as many other researchers, including Aidan Monahan, who will be our guest on Thursday in 2 days.
Yeah.
The-
So
We
there was about a
Here.
half a dozen of the terrorists that ran these planes into these buildings that came out after 9/11 said, no, I didn't do it.
Yeah,
Well, okay,
they're
well,
interviewed on the
how can they
You want
come
to
BBC.
out
pause it
and say
right
I
there?
think we can pause
Yeah.
it right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who wants to
I
go
would like
first?
to. I would like to address the remote control question.
Please.
All right. I have a real problem with the remote control theory, and that's what it is. It's theory. There is no proof that the planes were taken over by remote control. Absolutely no evidence whatsoever. You notice how he's careful in saying that there's proof that remote control technology existed, and that's true. But that's a far cry from saying it was used. In fact, the technology, the patents for the uninterrupted autopilot was uninterruptible autopilot or something like that. I can't remember exactly what they call it.
Boeing uninterruptible autopilot.
Yeah, there you go. It was a patent given to Boeing and I think Honeywell in 2006. This is several years after 9/11. Now the technology did exist prior. It wasn't very good at the time. It required sending just bits of data to the flight computer, and the flight computer would have a designated route that the plane would take. But there's several things here that's problematic. Number one, they never actually implemented this technology into service because it was rejected by the airline industry for several reasons. Nobody liked the idea of an aircraft being able to be taken control by the ground, and the passengers would not like that idea either, considering the ability to hack such systems was also a concern. Another issue, or several other issues, is that let's assume for a moment that remote control was on these planes. Let's say there was some selected planes that they put this technology on board for purpose of the operation. All right, number one, how do you account for maintenance problems? Let's say it's number one, you gotta have the technicians, you gotta have the maintenance crew, you gotta have the airline on board, you gotta take the plane out of service to retrofit the thing, you gotta put it into a hangar, and all these people involved in doing this now have to be involved. So you just increased your problem by orders of magnitude, and then you have the issue of what happens if there's a problem with the maintenance on one of these aircraft during their normal flight routines. It's like the plane lands, it's like, hey, we had a bird strike on the window, we got to replace it. So they take the plane out of service. Now that aircraft with that system on board is no longer in service, and they replace it with another aircraft that doesn't have it on board. So how are they going to take it over if they didn't have the system on board? So you have that problem. How long does it take to put the system on the plane? Does it take months? Does it take years? You have to test it. Do you have, what's the FAA have to say about it? But let's assume for a moment that they did have the remote control system on board, and the plane was taken over by remote control. Why wouldn't the pilot just get a hold of air traffic control and say, "Hey, my plane's just been hijacked from the ground. Can somebody help me out here?" And let's assume for a moment that the communications was also taken over, and therefore he had no way to communicate with ATC. Now you have the ATC losing communications with one of its aircraft. That would send up red flags. So you got that issue. And also, what's to keep the pilot from being able to go to the seatback phone and making a phone call if he lost communication in the cockpit? So you got that issue. Also, why didn't the pilot just, when he knew that he lost control of the aircraft, he knew that the plane was going to crash, why didn't he just jettison the fuel? Since the fuel dump would be a proper procedure in light of an aircraft crash, because you don't want all that fuel on board the aircraft when you hit the ground. So a procedure would be to jettison the fuel, do a fuel dump, get rid of all that fuel as much as possible, and then you can hopefully mitigate the risk of killing everybody on board. So, and then also to get the problem with the computer, even though it was taken over by remote control, is the computer is a system designed to allow the aircraft to make maneuvers that would put it in jeopardy. If the plane is going to be, can the plane remotely land without landing gear being down? It would probably not allow that. Is the remote control going to allow the aircraft to do a maneuver that it physically cannot do? It probably won't allow that, because the computer would not be, the remote control system would not be designed to do those sort of things. Now, then you have to go, well, maybe it was designed to, maybe they programmed it to do those things. Well, now you're getting ridiculous. Now you're just getting like, you're moving the goalpost so far that you completely lose sight of any sort of reality.
Yeah.
So there's so many problems with the remote control theory, and I don't buy it one bit. Plus, you have Flight 93, which actually you didn't hit its target. And you have the fact that Flight 93, you had a spotter aircraft that was actually watching the aircraft from above, and they were relaying the information to the air traffic control as to what it was doing, and including the plane going back and forth. That information is being relayed to the air traffic control by the other pilot who was spotting it. And they were spotting it for quite a while. And then that information is in sync with the flight data recorder information and in sync with the flight voice recorder information. So you got to explain all this.
Yeah, it's too complicated and it's too technical, and these people, they will speculate all that, and over just past the subject of Zacharias Moussaoui, wondering about piloting capability or whatnot, when Zacharias Moussaoui's roommate Hussein Alatas in Oklahoma, as we were talking previously, I don't know if you can show his photo, Adam. Do you have
I
it?
can actually.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna have to wait a minute. I'm gonna have to do a new screen share,
sure.
and there it is.
Hussein Alatas, yeah. He said, yeah, he asked Moussaoui, like, why are you going to different flight schools all the time? Why are you, why are you changing so often? And it's suspected he was going to be involved in one of these operations with Moussaoui. And Moussaoui said, it's really easy, the computer pretty much controls it all. With basically the autopilot. So he's already got that's already covered. If you want, people want to speculate and all that, you're hearing it right there from the actual terrorist cells. And I mean, come on.
Yeah, and look, I want to bring up your other picture that you showed me too. This is going to Art Olivier's point about living hijackers. Now, me and Nelson have been on this for years regarding about the misconception of hijackers and hijackers with similar sounding names. Now, everybody who basically adheres to the beliefs that Art Olivier espouses is that the BBC reported that there were living hijackers. Well, that's not necessarily true. Now, what they were interviewing were people with similar sounding names to the hijackers. Now, for example, if I blow this up a little bit, Saeed Al-Ghamdi was on Flight 93. Well, they interviewed Saeed Al-Ghamdi, who's actually a pilot in Tunisia.
For Saudi Airlines pilot. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He lived in Florida at one time too. And then you have Salim Al-Hazmi, and he's confused to be with this other Salim Ibrahim Al-Hazmi, who works for like the Saudi oil company, and he never visited Saudi Arabia, but he accused someone else of stealing his passport that was linked to these people. Okay, and then you got the classic Khalid Al-Madar in the middle. Right. I pointed that out in my film 6 on 77. The guy lived in Florida. It's not even the same. His name is Khalid Al-Malmadi. It's not Al-Madar. And then, you have Abdulaziz Al-Amari. This is the classic one used in one of the BBC articles, the one on the left below in the black and white. I call him Colorado Amari. He lived in Colorado one time and he had his passport stolen. Now, I would be suspicious of these people, the ones that are losing their IDs and all this other stuff, because they still might be part of this, part of the operation, part of aiding the operation. Still, particularly the other Al-Amari next to it, because there were two different Al-Amaris that represented the living one. The one that died. I'm sorry, with allegedly with Mohammed Atta. But he's another Saudi Airlines pilot. He was living in Florida. up until a week before 9/11, and he just suspiciously moved really quick. He moved his family out first, and while he waited, and became roommates with another guy who was reported to be a living hijacker too, which was Adnan Bakari. And people don't know about that one because they got the news straight out pretty quick, but they thought this al-Bakari was also one of the hijackers, and he worked for Saudi Airlines. So that's a whole other story. But the main ones, the ones they're going to point to and talk to is they point to the BBC article with the Waleed al-Shari.
Yeah, right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right
His
here.
brother is Wale al-Shari, and
Right
the
here.
thing is that the living Waleed, the one down below,
Right here.
he was, that's the one that came out and said, "Hey, I'm alive." But does he look like the other two? No, they shared both both brothers shared his ID, obviously, back and forth. And you scroll down a little bit, and it's just like my point here. Down. I mean, and my point here is like, the only like legitimate, kind of, claim of a living hijacker is going to come out from Ada because his dad said he got a phone call from him that, after 9/11, but there's also a lot of speculation that there could have been two different Adas, and that's a whole other situation. But
Sure.
point being is that he's the ringleader.
Right. Point being that he's really now, if that didn't clear up enough, I don't know what will, because we just showed you evidence that the BBC, by the way, even in the article itself, this is often missed by people of the fringe movements who believe in living hijackers. They basically are saying that we are going by people who had similar sounding names. And they received such a backlash of people saying that they were in on it, the BBC, that in 2006, they had a story regarding about the conspiracies of 9/11, and they addressed this issue saying, you should go back and read the article. We addressed this issue about people with similar sounding names to the hijackers themselves. And by the way, here's the obvious one. If they were living hijackers, why didn't the 9/11 Truth Movement or the media interview these people?
No, they did, but they're not. But it's all stolen IDs.
Right. I'm just saying, if they're alive.
Yeah. Why don't we
didn't they
have
go and
actual
interview
photos of the actual 19 alive?
Right,
Something.
right.
Why don't we have any? No, you don't have any because
Right.
they're dead.
Exactly. Right.
Or if they're living somewhere else, maybe they got
No,
plastic
I don't-
surgery. Maybe they're in
don't
Brazil.
understand. I don't understand the point of they're living hijackers, but I digress.
They didn't do it if they were suicide, bombers.
And those records were never corrected by the FBI. I mean, they get
Oh,
that
yes,
was my
they were.
birthday.
Yes,
Yeah,
they were.
I don't know why Richard Gage said yes, they were. In fact, on what was it, September 27th, Nelson? The FBI came
Yeah,
out with
that's
pictures
the
and
day
names?
when they released all the photos
Okay,
of all
yeah.
19. Yeah.
Right.
Day.
Yeah.
That's me, but
All those living accounts were already happening. You can let it play, I guess, but were
Right.
happening
I'm not a
already
hijacker.
before
Whatever
the
they
27th.
Anyway, my point here is that you've got intelligence agencies who have imported hijackers from Saudi Arabia, as described by Michael Springman, who was a State Department official, under whose noses he said the CIAs keep bringing all these shady characters in without going through the proper checks, which was his job to properly check them, and he was being bypassed. And they're put in flight schools for show so that they can say, well, they went to flight school. But even the flight instructors, tell us about that particular scene.
Hey, I could stop right here just for a second. In regards to the immigration of, I think it was mostly muscle hijackers.
Yeah.
These are people from Jeddah, Riyadh, or Saudi Arabia. The pilots were not, except for Hani Hanjour, was
That's
Saudi
it.
Arabian. J. Michael Springman worked at the Jeddah U.S. consular office. A majority of them came from Jeddah. Now, here's the problem. Richard Gage is assuming that the CIA basically picked out these people and pushed them through these agencies. Well, that's not what happened here. What happened was a number of these muscle hijackers filed applications for student visas. These are temporary visas, T1 student visas, and they're short term, 3 months, 6 months. I think the work visas are a little bit longer, but the student visas that they applied for ran into a bunch of problems. This is where J. Michael Springman suspended a majority of them. One was that they didn't know where they were going. Two was that they didn't have enough money. Three was they didn't know who they were meeting. And four, they didn't know about employment issues inside the states. So in other words, these guys really didn't know where they were going, how much money they had, and where additional funding was coming from. So
Yeah.
these suspensions were on hold. Now, J. Michael Springman's superior at the Jeddah Consul Office is Shania Steiger. Shania Steiger basically overruled J. Michael Springman and basically approved of all these applications. Now, it's alleged that Shania Steiger actually is a CIA case officer, but it's not been proven, although I don't necessarily dismiss that.
Yeah.
However, it is suspicious that she approved these applications without reviewing them with a review officer, which is what happens when there's a suspension issue. So what Richard Gage is doing here is really misleading, because there's a lot of issues that a suspension goes through. They have to go through a review board, which basically either agrees with J. Michael Springman's suspension or not. And they go through a review, and that's usually 30 to 45 days. But that's not what happened. That's what wasn't happening here. Shania Steiger just approved all of them. And then when
Yeah.
J. Michael Springman went to complain, he actually was let go of his position.
Yeah.
So I don't know why Richard Gage is assuming it was the CIA in general, he didn't name nobody, is pushing through all these people. And on top of this, if there's no hijackers, who are these people then?
Yeah. Why do you need them if you're not going
Right.
to use them?
Right.
there would be no pushing
Yeah. You don't. Yeah.
at
Why-
all.
Yeah.
None
And
of
most
this
important,
exists. Right.
most
And
Or
none
they're
of-
just, or they're, but he's going to say they're patsies, they're, but
Right, but
again,
then-
you just addressed
then
that.
that would defeat the point of them going on the planes. If they're not on the planes, then that means they're not involved with 9/11.
and his response is sort of bigoted and kind of closed-minded, because he just said, he just assumed that all the hijackers were Saudis. No, like you pointed out, they're the muscle.
Right.
The main hijackers, who are the that have all the intelligence links to even the Mossad, or
Right.
as the Hamburg cell.
That's right.
A Lebanese, an Egyptian, and United Arab Emirates, and you can add Ramzi Ben Al Shib, who's a Yemeni, but he never came into the country. He doesn't really count. You really just have the three who are the main pilots of the whole thing, and you just kind of just marginalize and just lump all that. Like, no, these people are deemed the ringleaders. This is happening in Europe, Western, Germany, Western,
Right.
continent. This is important information. You just don't just discard it. You don't just marginal. It's not that simple. It's just the Saudis these Saudi muscle were not that smart.
Right. And I just to add on that too, Nelson, Hani Hanjour was added late to the operation because originally Khalid Al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi was supposed to take
Yes.
flying lessons.
There
They
was a
were selected
Syrian
as
operative
pilots.
there's a Syrian, which I say is Syrian Muslim Brotherhood operative, I forget his name, I forget where it was. He was in Turkey, and he was the one who was going to assign that. They didn't want Hani Hanjour to be on there because he was sucking at flight school, whatever. But
Right.
you know what? You don't need an expert to crash a plane.
Right, exactly. And anyway, you pointed out that there could have been a 6 hijacker on Flight 77, which has a
Yeah.
lot of
Well,
interesting
that
evidence
becomes
behind
that
too.
becomes a whole other issue, that we should have had a fifth position at this conference representing, okay, we believe
Right.
the plane crashed, but we have 6 hijackers, we have other things, we have other problems, because there could have been more planes that were going to come into the Pentagon.
Right, exactly. Right.
With the flight instructor.
Yeah, so the the flight instructors call the FBI. They call the FBI in Minnesota, and they said that we've got this guy Zacharias Moussaoui. He says he's an English businessman, but he knows Arabic a lot better than he knows English, and he paid in all cash for the school. And he says, the thing about this is when somebody comes in here and pays this much money to learn how to fly a commercial jet, they at least have a pilot's license. They know how to fly a small plane or something like this, but this guy knows nothing, and so that's why they got suspicious and called the FBI, and that's that's when one of the characters, said, yeah, if this guy gets a hold of a 747 and flies it into a populated area, he's going to kill a boatload of people, man. And so, this was actual testimony from the FBI agents.
And then those,
Well, actually, just a little correction on that. When it came to Moussaoui, it was actually French and German intelligence that shared pertinent information that Moussaoui was linked to Abu Hamza. Abu Hamza al-Masri was actually a notorious Salafi fundamentalist in France, where he radicalized Zacharias Moussaoui. And that right there is the direct link for Moussaoui and a terrorist cell in a foreign land, which would have been the evidence enough for approval of a FISA warrant. And that's something that Colleen Rowley basically argued at the 9/11 Commission, as well as a Senate Select Committee hearing, where she basically even wrote a 3-page letter to then Director Robert Mueller, complaining about how that was enough information for a FISA warrant to be approved, and it was not. When did they search Zacharias Moussaoui's belongings? The day after 9/11.
FBI agents went after Moussaoui. They arrested him against the order of their boss in the FBI, and that's all accurate. And it's
No, it's not. I don't know where Richard Gage gets this from, and nobody at the FBI said don't arrest Zacharias or arrest Zacharias Moussaoui. I don't know where that came from. It actually, all it was that I had to make a correction. It wasn't Clarence Prevost. I always forget these two guys. Clarence Prevost got the reward for the money, but it was Tim Nelson and Hugh Sims. I had to look this up because I knew back when I said, wait a minute, there was two guys. And
Yeah.
that's who alerted the FBI's to these guys.
Yeah.
And Prevost got the reward.
And Colleen Rowley is going to be brought up, and you should bring it to attention that you have already interviewed Colleen Rowley,
Right.
and you've even got in full depth. And of course, these are the kinds of guests that, people that Art Oliver wouldn't even bother to reach and find out information, and certainly not going to be the kind of guest that Richard Gage will bring on his show.
included
Right.
in your film, right?
Right.
Don't
yeah.
know why.
Yeah. So Colleen Rowley, I think her name was, and
Yeah.
I think she was on the cover of Time magazine as one of the whistleblowers.
Yeah.
But
I
she
think,
was
yeah.
Harry Samet's boss at the time when that the arrest of Zacharias Moussaoui was going on.
And who's Harry
She's not the
Stamets?
one that told him not to arrest him. It was the headquarters in.
Who was
Washington,
Harry
D.C.
Stamets?
He was the actual agent that arrested Zacharias Moussaoui.
Oh, and Colleen Rowley was his
FBI.
boss?
Colleen, yeah. Mhm.
No, actually, he's mistaken here. It's actually Marion Bowman. He has a nickname, Spike. That's who Harry Samet's boss is. Colleen Rowley actually taught law at the FBI minister. She's the FBI special legal counsel. I've interviewed Colleen Rowley for my podcast, The Darkened Hour, and you could look that up. And she basically says that I worked as legal counsel for the Minneapolis Field Division of the FBI. She wasn't Harry Samet's boss, and I'm not going to blame Art Olivier here. So but still.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Okay, so anyway, and then you got Hani Hanjer, who was at another flight school, who failed Cessna flying school, and all of a sudden he's able to do this
Which
incredible
one?
maneuver.
He went to like
with,
5 or 6 of them.
the 757 flying into the Pentagon, descending 8,000 feet in 3 minutes in a corkscrew turn. But
Does anybody have any beef with that? Like, this is usually an argument I always hear from people that saying, well, they couldn't have made that corkscrew turn. It was a 350-degree turn. And this is actually replicated by amateur pilots. Now, Nelson, you shared a video with me earlier about the flight data recording of Flight 77. And also,
Sure.
I think you're the first one to show me an amateur pilot duo from a German, I want to say it was a German documentary. And that was the first time I ever saw amateur pilots recreate the crash scene from the technical data retrieved from the flight data recorder. And the guy did it twice in a row. He did it 2 times in a row. It was an amateur pilot. And I always hear this argument saying, oh, even experienced pilots can do this. Well, this originates from Pilots for 9/11 Truth, which was a group created by the late Rob Balsamo and I think Russ Wittenberg. And they basically, by the way, Rob Balsamo was never a certified commercial airlines pilot. He's a Piper plane pilot, but Russ Wittenberg, I believe, is. But that doesn't mean that all of a sudden, the international aviation industry is basically going to get behind the idea that these pilots couldn't do that. And these pilots for 9/11 Truth are like, I think it's like 10 people who are basically going to say that, and they automatically assert that there's no hijackings going on. So they're already going into it with a biased worldview.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's the problem.
what's interesting is that you never hear anybody explain why it can't be done.
Right.
They just say it can't be done. Well, why?
Yeah.
What would happen if it did?
Yeah.
And
This
because
was-
all it is, it's a turn of a yoke and a push forward on the yoke, and maybe some rudder. But that's what it is. It's just planes turn. Well, I was in the Air Force. I watched aircraft,
Yeah.
C5s, everything
should
do
play
touch
it.
and goes all day long. And what they do, they land, and then they do a cork. They do a turn.
Are you-
360. Come back in, do another land, take off. They touch down and go. Touch and go all day long. They practice landing, take off, and they do every time they have to do that. They do a turn and a descent. It's like a very common thing to do. I don't know what the big deal is.
Are you going to play the video, Adam, or shall we play?
Oh
Because-
yeah, if you
because
got
the
it.
re-
Do you
Because
want
the
me to,
reality is this they had a 12-hour conference and they didn't even cover that, because that was always one of the big ordeals, was like, aeronautical impossibilities. I mean, I was convinced of this damn theory once, like, oh, it couldn't fly that low and that fast or do those turns. What is this corkscrew? A corkscrew, you have to do 360 twice to make a corkscrew. It doesn't even do it barely does one 360. That's not a corkscrew. And
Right.
it's,
you want me to play the flight data recorder that you sent me?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, wait a minute.
yeah.
Let it load up.
You
Let it load up, and then I'll play it and I'll share the screen. And so everybody could see it for themselves.
yeah.
Nelson sent me this file earlier this afternoon, and we're going to watch it together.
Yeah.
And no, this is not it. Sorry. So here it is right here. So this is taken from the flight data recorder, the NTSB flight data recorder transcript, what was saved from the crash of American Airlines Flight 77. So all these movements are basically transcribed from the flight data recorder of the plane.
What is this?
Flight
I'm seeing,
77
please
itself.
read, upgrading you're doing, not launch installer because of bug
What's that?
from our team. I'm not seeing any video.
You're not seeing any video?
No,
Yeah,
I'm seeing,
we're seeing,
no,
we're seeing the VLC media player saying, "Do you want to download? Yes or no?"
yeah.
Oh, is that? I'm sorry. You know what? Is that's what you saw? I have
Yeah.
to apologize. I'm sorry about that. So let me upload it again, because that did come up on my screen, and I thought I took it out of the screen. So hold on. Let me share the screen again. I have to apologize, pal. All right. Hopefully that works.
There you go.
Okay.
It'd be great if we had like what's that movie soundtrack? God, I'm thinking. Besides Top Gun.
Did you see Tom Cruise, right?
Yeah,
The music behind it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
But I mean, this is all, by the way, this trajectory, this is all coming from the analytical data that was retrieved from Flight 77
Yeah.
from the flight data recorder.
This
I
is
think-
supposed to be Hani Hanjour coming in at the last moment, come up
Right.
to before he goes straight into the Pentagon. This is the turn to get lower to the ground to
No,
reach the impact point.
Movement. Notice how much movement, and notice how much movement there is in the yoke. Not
Yeah.
much at all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, is that hard? Is that complicated? I mean, what's
And he pulled
seems,
back a little bit. He pulled back a little bit there, got some elevation,
yeah,
pulled back again. And it was funny. Aircrafts are very slow to respond. So when you do a movement on the yoke, it's like, okay, there's the movement, and then the aircraft responds. So it's kind of so that's why you don't do jerky movements. But this is I don't see the
And-
issue here.
I want to explain, right here is the altitude, okay, of the pilot of the plane. And I think this is the speedometer.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, it's going like
is-
300 miles when
yeah,
it's turning. And
Yeah,
stuff.
that's 200,
Yeah, it's a
yeah, about
notch.
300 miles an
Mhm.
hour. And I
Yeah.
don't know what this is.
Whoa! Oh, wow! Wow! Well, major. Oh, whoa! Major action there. You see that?
yeah, but somebody's doing that remotely from the ground. You see,
Yeah.
Right, this is what they have to believe, right?
yeah.
What's so hard about this, pentards?
And what are the remote control guys looking at too? It's like when they're remotely hijacked, when they remotely take over an aircraft, what are they looking at? Because where's the camera? You know, they using visual sight, or are they just simply flying by instrument? You know, I don't know. That's a good
Well,
question.
I'm going to assume that they think that the camera is actually viewing what's ahead of them.
Yeah, I'm talking about the real. If it was really hijacked by remote control, what is the person actually controlling the aircraft? What is he looking at?
Oh, what is it? That's a good point.
You know, I assume it's somebody who has to have some serious instrument certification
Yeah.
because you can't rely on visual.
Yeah, so what we just saw was the actual the turn that they were talking about, the corkscrew turn. And
Yeah,
now
this is the corkscrew. This is a corkscrew. This is what Richard Gage told his audience, repeating from the echo chamber. Yeah,
Right.
that's right. That's what you're part of, Richard Gage, an echo chamber. You lie and you tell people this is
Now watch the speed increase here.
Yeah, it should start to
Why
increase.
when it starts its descent and right to the
Yeah,
last
look,
minute?
it's going past 300 now. Yeah.
Yep. So and there it is. It just finishes the turn pointing at a target with a couple of miles to run and over 2,000 feet of altitude to use. And all you need to do is that's right, full throttle, and it's all clear ahead.
And by people are going to question why it faded out at that point, and the reason being is because that information was gathered through basic radar, and at that
They
point
caught
it went under the radar signature, so they lost radar contact with it.
Oh no, the original recording does go all the way up into the Pentagon. It's just
does it?
that's just edited. Yeah, that's just edited from Screw Loose.
Well, I
Cheese.
know. Yeah. Yeah. There's also. It's important to note too. There's also radar signatures that they sunk together with the flight data recorder information, and that data. So they were able to line it up perfectly and use both pieces of data, and they both line up perfectly. But that data was that particular information was lost at when it went underneath radar altitude, and you couldn't pick it up by radar anymore.
Right.
Well,
Now,
that
what-
was something that showed at Pentagon, folks. You know?
Right. Now, what was so important was that Nelson wanted to show you was that it really didn't take much to make that corkscrew turn at 290 miles an hour. As you could see, even with the wheel, the steering part of the plane, was that it barely even moved.
It's not even a corkscrew, and it's
Right.
it's 3 fucking minutes to do that damn turn.
Here we go.
My point here is that you have intelligence agencies setting up patsies who didn't even need to be on the
Oh.
planes. You can just provide whatever proof you want.
See, now this is where Richard Gage makes a huge leap and a big mistake here, right? He thinks that it's just easy to facilitate profiles, that it's easy to get all these public and private entities to basically go with the program. Do you know how many people would have to be involved
Yeah.
in, let's just say from the public level, okay?
Yeah, but
Public employees at the airlines who gave them boarding passes, who went through security screening, all
Yes.
those people would have to be in on it.
there would be yes, but it's really simple because it's look. They say all that like this is to stage. Okay, you don't stage things and create anomalies. Then there should not be living hijackers. Then there should not be all these other things, extra people involved. You
Right.
know, okay. If you're saying this is so many people to facilitate these 19 people as so-called patsies, You know,
Right.
why are there anomalies? Why? So we can scramble and just, argue about it for the rest of our lives? Oh, that's right. It's to focus on the Twin Towers. Sorry.
Right. So what I'm saying is that what Richard Gage is doing here is making a bigger operation than what it originally is intended for, right? So all these people,
And imperfect.
right?
Not
and
even
all-
perfect.
And all these people, and I'm not even including the first responders who were involved with the search and rescue in New York and Pennsylvania and Washington, who
Yeah.
picked up plane debris, who picked up human remains of passengers and crew. They all have to be in on it. And as well as the phone calls, they're all faked. So that means that Airphone, AT&T, all those operators, they have to be in on it too. Now, how do you control all those people with a number of different agencies that would have to be monitoring each and every one of those people to make sure for 20 years they never talked about the inside job?
Why would you want to stage a puzzle when you can just stage the whole piece, the whole picture already done?
Well,
Wouldn't it
no,
be-
but hold on a second. No, remember,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
in the beginning, Art talks about all these, because one of the things that got him motivated to the movie was the fact that you had all these, he got a hold of the passenger lists, remember? And he said there was a whole bunch of Defense Department folks and all these
Right,
government officials and
Right.
people worked for Raytheon and all this stuff, and that were on these planes. I'm like, well, okay. So implying that all these people had connections to technology to be able to facilitate this operation, and they somehow now had to be gotten rid of.
Do all this.
Somehow or another. So now somehow or another, the government now has this ability to manipulate the universe in such a way that all these people who have their own lives somehow end up on these planes on the same day, and then somehow, I don't know, get taken off the plane, put in an incinerator, and then not even considering the fact that they're not the only people involved in those companies, involved in those Department of Defense. You got a whole bunch of other people involved too. What about them?
Then, when you do all that, then what? Might as well give us security video. Give us security video of Boston Logan if they could do everything else. They don't. Why? So, there's a reason why. There's a different reason why.
Right. Well, that's because what you have alluded to, and I agree with you,
Yes.
is that this was a bigger operation.
It was a bigger operation.
Right.
There were more planes that were supposed to be hijacked from Boston Logan. There were
Right.
more targeted flights.
And
That's
here's
why
the,
they don't release the security video.
and
It's
here's the
because there were
kicker.
hundreds of people involved with all this.
Right.
They all got
exactly.
arrested over the past few months. They're all
Here's the
connected to
kicker.
these.
Right.
hijackers
And here's the
guys.
kicker. We're not assuming it's Al Qaeda.
This doesn't make the official story. This is
Right.
not the official
Right. It
story,
doesn't fit the official-
folks.
That's
Right.
right. That's right.
That they
if they
were,
can
and
fake
even
all
if they
this,
were,
you don't give us a loose chain of evidence. You give us a full chain.
Correct. That's right.
If you're saying that you can do all this, there's no reason for the puzzle. There's no reason to create this doubt, all this dissent, and especially at the level when you get to Trump and all this stuff and Alex Jones' popularity, that becomes a whole thing. People can't live this. You can't live 2007 forever.
up patsies who didn't even need to be on the planes. You can just provide whatever proof you want that they were. And even if they were, it doesn't matter because they're controlling the planes, they're controlling the patsies. The official story does not, well, the official story depends on the hijackers being in control of these planes and on them.
Patsies.
But the 9/11 truth movement does not depend at all. We're not blaming the hijackers. We're blaming
Stop it right
the-
there.
Yeah, sure.
Stop right there.
Yeah, please.
The 9/11 truth movement depends on the truth. Hijackers or not. It's in the words, it's in the phrase, truth movement. It relies and it's dependent on the truth. It's not your job, Richard, to go off and try to prove an inside job. It's your job to prove what actually happened.
Great point.
That's it. Yeah, and it sounds like it's bias already. Europe,
That's exactly my point.
Yeah, it's you don't approach these subs. You don't approach a crime with bias.
No,
Period. I mean,
Richard,
that's why you and I, Nelson, were able to change our belief when we came across new evidence.
yeah,
We know this.
exactly. And, but because too much of these things we're relying on was just too many good sounds too good, half truths. That's the thing. They sound good, but they don't have any validity.
Half truth doesn't work in court.
No, it doesn't.
Richard, imagine a crime scene investigator goes to a scene of a crime, and the first thing he says is, "I know what didn't happen here." It would sound ludicrous. Imagine going to a murder scene and he looks at the scene before he even picks up a piece of evidence and actually announces, "I know what didn't happen here." Now, you would think that that's ludicrous. Well, that's what we see you as here. Like, you can't basically say the 9/11 truth movement doesn't depend on hijackers. Well, who made you the authority all of a sudden on geopolitics for 9/11? You, for the past, 18 years, have been involved with the physics of what happened at the World Trade Center. Now, I don't speak about the physics. Why? Because I have the honesty to say that I have no work when it comes to engineering, no work when it comes to physics. So my opinion means nothing. So I don't speak on something that I would say I have no authority to speak on. I would rather listen to David Chandler. I would rather listen to Wayne Costi or Ken Jenkins, maybe even Tony Zambotti or Stephen Jones, Niels Harrod, yourself. But when it comes to this specific subject, Richard, you basically just dove right in for 6 months, 7 months now. And you basically are saying with arrogance behind it that the 9/11 truth movement doesn't pertain to hijackers on the planes.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, this is what really grinded my gears.
Imagine going to a crime scene, a murder scene, and there's no body.
Oh,
You don't need a body. You don't need a body to prove
Right.
a murder.
Yeah. Patsy. I mean, we should just go over that word, that definition. Why is he using the term patsy? How are these hijackers patsies?
right. What is the
What is a
complete
patsy?
definition?
Yes.
Right.
So
So
we understand, yeah, and read it in the context of what we know, hijackers, Al Qaeda.
I'm going to read it from the dictionary.com on my phone. So it
Sure.
says patsy, plural, a person who is easily swindled, deceived, coerced, persuaded, sucker, a person who the blame for something falls for, a scapegoat, a fall guy.
Yeah.
Did any of the hijackers agree to be a fall guy for 9/11?
No, they were intentionally doing it. They knew what they were doing.
I have 11
If-
martyrdom
How
videos.
does that make it patsies? I mean,
I have 11 martyrdom videos of the hijackers.
yeah, exactly. You have
11.
11 martyrdom videos. Okay, yeah, exactly. There's all the other proof of all that. How are these people patsies if they're willful? How are they even patsies even in your fakeness? Like, why are they even there for? I don't know what they're to do. Like, and then, if they're
If
there leaving
they-
this fake trail, why aren't
if
they
there's-
arrested?
If there's any truth to the patsy claim, it's only coming from the imams and the higher ups in the terrorist cells who convince these people to become martyrs.
That's a great
Easily
point.
swindled, easily swayed.
That's a great
So
point.
they are patsies to the actual higher ups in the
Right.
terrorist cells,
That's a great
not
point.
to the intelligence agencies.
Right.
No, thank you.
Exactly.
Yes, it can be put in those terms, exactly. But
And
usually these people, even if they're guided by that, they know
Mhm.
what they're doing. They know what they're sacrificing. They know what they're giving their history, their reputation for,
Right. And that would lead
Right.
to something that me and Nelson have been investigating in the last couple of years. When it comes to the groomers of the Hamburg cell, for example, people like Mohammed Haydar Zamar, Marmoon Darkanzali, people who have connections with Arab criminals and Al Qaeda, gun
Yes.
runners, people who these are money launderers too,
Drug dealers,
legitimate businessmen.
organized crime in the underworld in the Middle East. in Arab
Exactly
world.
right. Right. And when you look at organized crime in the Middle East, what do we find? Israeli Mossad, CIA, Pakistan ISI. But all this basically doesn't exist if you don't do your due diligence and look into the backgrounds of the people Richard Gage and Olivier saying don't exist. Well, that makes me think, why are they saying that these people don't exist? Is it because they don't want you to look at a deeper angle involving
They don't
the
want to
real
realize that
perpetrators?
it's a much more complex situation.
Yeah, that's another
That
thing
it's
too.
just not as simple.
Well, like I keep saying, in order to,
fulfill your conspiracy prophecy, you know.
well, I
Oh,
keep
sorry.
saying, in order to understand this the geopolitical aspects of 9/11, it requires work.
Yeah.
And
They
a lot of
haven't
work.
done it.
And they don't want to do it. It's much easier just to follow the echo chamber.
Yeah,
perpetrators.
We
of
only know
9/11.
what we don't know.
that's a great statement. That's a great
We're
statement.
not saying we know.
who simply
You
used
are up there saying, acting like you know.
Right, exactly.
those patsies. So this argument put forth again and again and again by this particular individual, Adam,
Adam.
is absolutely off the point. And I don't know why he keeps pushing it, but it is. I hear it like
Adam.
it's just this point. It's irrelevant.
Okay, I'm going to end it here because he talks about Shankville or Olivier, and that's the second part of this video.
But it's important when he's irrelevant. I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No, right. No, Richard, you totally missed my point, and I'll make it again because I said it previously early in the video. I said, Richard, the biggest mistake you made was that all of those intelligence agencies I just named were involved with operations that predate 9/11 by 6 years. And you're willing to say that because all these hijackers couldn't have been on the planes or didn't need to be on the planes because you think you're the representative of the truth movement, you basically threw away all of these agencies and all of their complicity and foreknowledge because you don't want to admit that planes can be hijacked by Arabs. Because to you, the official narrative is a microcosm of the 9/11 Commission report. And to you, that's the whole official narrative. For you, the official narrative is this: 4 planes were hijacked by 19 Islamic fundamentalists, and they crashed into the World Trade Center, Pentagon, and Shankville. And that's it. Your mistake is this: that is a microcosm of the 9/11 Commission report. Do you know what's in the Commission report? Did you read the whole thing? I have it uploaded, and I'm the only person in the world to upload both the 9/11 Commission report and the Joint House Inquiry in total, so that people like you can look at it and learn what's true, what's not, and most of all, what's missing. And what's missing is what me and Nelson have been trying to tell you for years. Like, for example, what Nelson covers, the additional hijackings of September 13th that the FBI covered up. I've been trying to tell you for years about the NSA, who collected so much metadata about bin Laden's satellite phone and the Al-Qaeda communications hub that they could have heard the operations of Khobar Towers, the USS Cole, the 1998 East Africa bombings, Millennium Plot, and 9/11. And by the way, that's not me just saying it. The former senior executive of the NSA, Thomas Drake, the biggest whistleblower since Edward Snowden, he basically said this, that the NSA alone, just them alone, had so much metadata on everybody involved with 9/11, they could have stopped 9/11 from even happening in the year 2000.
Yeah.
Just
yeah,
alone.
because of the Millennium Plot. They only busted a few people. They didn't extend
Right.
out and grab everyone else.
Right.
And then they give us this big myth that they only moved to the United States like later on in the summer of 2000. No, not the. I mean, they say it specifically with the Hamburg cell. No, not with Ziad al-Jar, with the one with cousins that are Mossad assets and spies. He moved to New York in 1995, had an apartment with a cousin. And that's completely out of the official story. And the newspapers that were reporting on it showed a copy, top portion of the rental contract of the apartment he was living at.
Right.
He told his family he was living in Yemen at the time.
By the way, there's another big cover up, because I know a lot of people who don't believe in planes and hijackers love to blame Israel. Well, look what you're throwing away. And this is something me and Nelson have been trying to plead with you for years. We may be bagging even a bigger part of the operation involving Israel. Now, hear us out. Ziad Jarrah had an uncle and a cousin who are basically involved with Israeli intelligence, one of which is Ali al-Jarrah, who was arrested in 2011 by Hezbollah and by Lebanese authorities because he was a spy for Israel for 25 years. His brother is Joseph al-Jarrah, who helped him spy for 10 years. Well, he had an uncle, Asim al-Jarrah, who, by the way, in the crash scene of Shankville, there was a business card belonging to Asim al-Jarrah, and on the other side of that card was an address of who? Ramzi bin al-Shib, an apartment in Germany. Why would that be in the debris field of Shanksville if there's no hijackers? Well, why is that important? Well, Asim al-Jarrah was an operative for who? The Abu Nidal organization, an organization that even predates Al-Qaeda here in the United States, going back to the 70s, that Nelson's been covering for the past, 4 years. Nobody's been listening.
Years,
this is what we've been trying to tell you all along.
But do you know who Abu Nidal is?
Oh, well, that's
Exactly.
You know?
that becomes a whole other understanding. That's the greater awakening to all of this. And
Sure.
stuff.
And
People need to know. People need to know who Bin Laden is and what the legitimacy of all that
Right.
stuff. You need to
And-
know it, whether it's propaganda or not. Doesn't mean you have to believe it, but
Right.
you need to know it. You need
Right.
to know the biographies of these people.
Right. And we're only hinting on speculation here because we
Yeah.
believe that Ziad Jarrah was not on Flight 93. Now, if you listen to the phone calls, instead of saying they're faked, you would actually see that 6 of those phone calls contradict the 9/11 Commission report and the FBI's pin bomb report. 3 hijackers. What does the FBI say and the 9/11 Commission say? 4 hijackers. So you have 6 phone calls, 2 from flight attendants, 4 from passengers, basically saying there were 3 hijackers in which all 3 were dark-skinned males. You Google Ziad Jarrah and see what color he looks like. Not only
Yeah.
that, this is speculation. We think he was the Israeli mole that the CIA wanted all along when recruiting that Ed brought up about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, but were unsuccessful. So we think, this is speculation, we think Ziad Jarrah was that Israeli mole.
Yeah, or it's even possible. I even possibly think too that his family may have been tied into organized crime, and that's why they were getting such cover. They weren't
Yeah.
like on a look-away list. You
Right.
know?
And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't whenever Jara was with the other patsies, for lack of a better term,
Yeah,
didn't he like to have his own room?
Yes.
yeah, he did. I
Versus
think,
being-
yeah.
And now if he was an intelligence mole, that would make sense, because that would mean he's trying to limit his exposure to the people he's monitoring
Yeah,
in order to keep from being found out about. So he keeps himself on his own room. This would keep him from being able to limit his communication
yeah.
with the other suspects.
And there's also the possibility he could have been managing other teams at Newark. It's just not Flight 93 that's his target.
Right.
There's other flights at Newark Airport. So, and that's a whole other story. It's very important. So that's also worth considering.
Right. So this is what Richard Gage and Olivier are throwing away. The potential for Israeli intelligence to have a bigger part in the role, a major part in the role, because he doesn't want you to believe in hijackers. And this is not unfounded speculation, by the way. This is actually speculation that's reasonable because there is certain evidence. I mean, Ziad Jarrah's family is filled with Israeli intelligence, Libyan intelligence even, and German intelligence, and being involved with a terrorist organization, Abu Nidal. All right. So that's actually factual. So we're not saying that Ziad Jarrah definitely is an Israeli mole. He very well could be.
He's
That's what
definitely
we're saying.
would definitely be an asset. I mean, especially
Right.
if these
This
people
is
are
something the
obviously
truth
doing-
movement is supposed. This is something the truth movement should be doing. This is the
Right.
work the truth movement should be doing, investigating this sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah, bigger,
Yeah.
more stronger organization,
Right.
more
Exactly.
thinking in legal
This is where the
terms, more-
energy needs to be pushed, because
Yes.
this is where the evidence leads us.
more exploratory activism.
That's why
You know,
we're doing this video. We're doing this video to try and reach out to you people, and to you too, Richard Gage, is that look at what you're throwing away because you want to believe anything other than the official narrative, because anything other than the official narrative, even if it's irrational, has to be believed at all costs. And I think that's the mistake you make. Now, just like what Nelson said and Ed said earlier, was that you went into 9/11 already with a prejudiced view of 9/11, suggesting that you know what didn't happen. You know, or you assume that 9/11 truth movement doesn't need hijackers on these planes. Yes, they do. That was the whole essence of 9/11
Yeah,
was
that
to
was the sheer
hijack
terror.
planes
That
and crash them into targets.
But it
I
doesn't
made- I said
relieve
my-
the United States government of culpability.
Yeah, why?
It doesn't
why-
mean it wasn't an inside job.
Right,
That's the biggest thing I'm trying to get. That's the biggest thing you need to understand.
right, exactly.
Well,
Please,
you know, I want to correct something that I said about the empty field. It wasn't
you may want
totally
to what
empty.
you played it. Did he say irrelevant? Is this, or is he going to say it again?
No, this is actually what Olivier is saying about the empty field. Actually.
Yeah, but you didn't let it finish because he just basically says all of it is irrelevant.
Oh, is that
because-
right?
Yeah.
I'm going to reverse it a little bit.
But it is, I hear it,
Yeah.
like it's just this point. It's irrelevant. Okay, I said my
Well,
piece.
Okay.
you know,
Wait,
I wanna
he
correct
said it's
something
relevant, after the fact of saying, basically, it's basically this. He's saying it's all about the Twin Towers. It's all about
Yeah,
the World
exactly.
Trade Center.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what 9/11 is all about. And, he says that, whether he doesn't take a firm position on,
Look,
on the-
that's his wheelhouse. I get why he would do that, but it's like that's not the right way to do it.
no,
know,
well, he's
it's
not
like-
even doing the math. That's the thing. It's not just because he's not, making a whole hypothesis, off the authentic planes with the actual fuel. He says it could be
Right,
any-
but I mean, just generally speaking, that's his wheelhouse. The buildings, the structure,
Right.
class,
yeah,
that's
but
what he's been
there's
focused
a
on
thing.
for all these years.
Are we here not to serve the victims of 9/11?
100%,
Oh, that's a good
absolutely.
point.
Okay, okay,
Right,
okay.
That's a good point.
Okay, now he's just got rid of, he's got rid of a lot of them right there, just with all 4 planes. So that's a problem already.
Right.
So, he says, we're not here to try to blame those Muslims or, Arabs hijackers as being involved. So his whole contention is like, look, when it comes to the World Trade Center, there's no foreign involvement. There's no way to do that. Because I'm sure he's set on his nanothermite and all that stuff, his military grade nanothermite, which has never been proven, never been, no patent, no use for it. No, there's nothing practical. It doesn't go boom. It doesn't, I don't want to get into all of that, but there are people who worked in there. I mean, he talks, his favorite thing is to try to talk about prior access is the elevator company. Which elevator company is Ace Elevators, right?
Yeah,
Is
that's
it-
right. That's right.
Ace Elevators, right? Well, several people from Ace Elevators died on 9/11. They still were there trying to help, with the damage because some of the elevators weren't working and they
Oh, I
actually died on
forgot
9/11.
about that. That's right, Nelson. They
okay.
actually went there. That's right.
Yeah, got a whole
I forgot about that.
whole newspaper article about it.
That's
okay,
right.
okay. So you got to rule that out. So there's this other people who have unlicensed access to work in the buildings and down below and even into the elevators. And they work for some company called Danko Mechanical or
Oh.
Magic Heating and Air. And they were working on the towers just prior to 9/11 and didn't even have a proper work permit. They don't even know how they got clearance basically through the Port Authority. And they sure don't look like a bunch of Caucasians. They don't look like anything American.
There you go.
No. Khalid Attallah, Rocky Hamad, Abdul Hasim Hamad, who's the brother, Mohammed Fars, and then Mustafa. I think Mustafa's Egyptian. Fars is he's Lebanese descent, but born in Venezuela. Rocky and Abdul, I think those two are the Jordanians.
I think he's
And then
Rocky's Moroccan.
No, there's no Moroccans in this. No,
There's no Moroccan.
no, there's
You
no
sure?
Moroccans in this. Nope. This is like it's almost like Hamburg-Cell.
Okay.
It's almost the same nationalities of Hamburg-Cell.
Yeah, I thought
Is there
he
an
was Moroccan.
Israeli
but
in this
okay.
bunch, or did somebody?
Yeah,
speak-
well, no, he's Palestinian. He's from Jerusalem. That's
Okay,
that's
yeah,
Attallah.
okay, all right.
Attallah is the yeah. Okay, these guys were working for Magic Heating and Air. Danko Mechanical, and they were caught in a driver's license scam. And when the feds were busting Middle Eastern suspects, they were looking through trails, and they pulled the sting. They knew these guys were coming down there, and they busted them.
Yeah, it was a woman was Catherine Smith.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was becomes a woman who was involved with the DMV that was giving these guys was working with Atala, and for I guess quite a while, doing like $5,000 or $1,000 for each ID. Woman did it. It was actually was a Christian woman or whatnot, but she was supposed to show up in court to testify against them, and
Right.
she dies in a car. They say that she killed herself, but she's set on fire, and she's got nothing of
It was the day before she was supposed to testify.
Yeah, day before she's supposed to testify, she's
She was
found
horribly
dead.
burned.
Yes,
It's
it's complete.
horrible.
She's murdered, and
She
they
burned to
don't
death
even
in a car accident.
yeah, that's a whole other story. But the thing is yeah, these guys have had work. You know this story, Adam. Go ahead.
Yes, yeah. I think wasn't it Otala that sold her a car, and that's how they got
Yeah.
the relationship going?
Yeah, they knew. Yeah,
Yeah,
Atolo
and
in the gas station in Tennessee. But
Right.
the other guys, they lived up in New York and New Jersey. And Atala obviously back and frequented there, so he was kind of like their ringleader. So yeah, these people work for companies working at the World Trade Center. They have no
Well,
access. They
Rocky-
have no. Yes, no
Rocky was
Moroccans.
arrested. And when they found a pass on him dated September 5th, 2001, and it was a pass that had access to the World Trade Center.
Yeah, they had access
So-
to control the fireproof sprinkling, which the sprinklers didn't even go up on the top floors.
Right.
They went
And
on the
didn't the FBI
lower floors. They still work, but
Yeah, during the Pent Bomb investigation, the FBI actually went to the Port Authority and asked whether Denko Mechanical was actually authorized to work in the basement levels, and the Port Authority said that no, they were not authorized to work in the basement levels. And when they asked, they said, "Well, then how can they explain, the pass and where their presence was?" They said, "Well, we don't know what the tenants were doing because we don't write down what companies the tenants visit. But for the World Trade Center, they weren't authorized to work in the basement levels." So, I don't think they were supposed to be there anyway.
yeah.
So what
We're not
were they
saying-
doing?
Yeah,
Right.
well, the thing is, we're not saying these were directly the guys. We're saying this could be part of a team. That
Sure.
if this could be done, there could have been other work crews doing the same thing.
Correct.
We don't even know who other co-workers were at.
Right.
And wasn't Denko a shell corporation anyway?
Yes, it was. It's a guy's business, a house. It was a house.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't even a legit business. It was an apartment. The
Sergei
business for
Denko.
the business address for this.
Yeah.
Look.
So
Really,
again, it's circumstantial evidence that needs to be looked at and explored. And this is again, it's something the truth movement needs to be doing.
Yeah, look, Art's just going to go into talking about 93. There's something we need to show before. I mean, look, show the clip from My Phil Boston Logan 9/11. That I have it queued. I remember that link I sent.
Sent the link.
Yes, it's queued. It's a queued link. I sent it to you. I emailed it.
You did?
Or on Facebook. I did.
I was not aware of that. Hold on.
Or yeah, with the group message between me and you and Ed.
Me, you, and Ed. Really?
Yeah.
I'm actually going to load it. I didn't
Yeah.
see that. I don't see it.
It should be there, or check one of the Facebook messages.
Is it a YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's a YouTube link. But
I got it. Okay, I got it. Okay. Did you have a timestamp?
it's right there, timestamp. Yes.
Yeah,
it's
you got-
timestamp
okay,
right
you know
where
what?
we
Now-
need to
all right.
start. Yeah.
Thank you
Yes.
very much. So you know
Yes.
what? Let me
Swap that out. Yeah.
Let me share it.
Yes. This
and,
is the point.
Yeah, this is
This is
it.
the point. Look, we're here. Like before we play it, Mr. Gage, so he gets it.
Soon
He didn't do no
after,
math.
Is it right here?
Yeah. Don't play it
independent
right
and
now.
scientific
Yeah.
skeptics, through basic
Don't play it,
observations
I was
and
gonna
numerous
say,
What's that? Play it.
yeah. Well, it's good right there. But I'm just saying, he's talking about like it doesn't matter. Like, look how many people die just because of the planes versus the demolition of the Twin Towers. And I'm not saying it's not important. No, we shouldn't marginalize those. but you've never done the math. You never really looked at the totality of these things, but it is documented already.
Early witness accounts disagreed with the authorities' instant conclusion in how the Twin Towers were destroyed by just plane impacts and subsequent fires, and that the obliteration of the World Trade Center was also due in part to pre-placed explosives inside the buildings, which conspiracy theorists label today and accuse the attacks as primarily being a controlled demolition. As a consequence of the September 11th attacks, 2,977 people were killed exactly, making nearly 3,000 people perishing from the largest terrorist attack in the world. But if the truth be told, the immediate deaths included 125 at the Pentagon and 265 passengers throughout the 4 planes. When Flight 175 struck the South Tower, it's estimated that 637 people were killed instantly or trapped at and above the floors of impact. When Flight 11 struck the North Tower, it ensured the deaths of 1,402 occupants at and above the aircraft's impact zone. That's a total of 2,429 victims on average, which accounts for about 80% of the 9/11 deaths as a result from the hijacked airliners alone, and not the subsequent collapse or demolition of the Twin Towers. So you have to wonder, if we're seeking justice and accountability for those innocent lives lost on 9/11, in consideration of unanswered questions regarding the hijackings and hijackers, as well as the consequential quagmire with the unjustified invasion of Iraq and failed war on terrorism, in those victims' names, why is the 9/11 Truth Movement only focused on the destruction of the World Trade Center and not on any of the hijackings or airports of 9/11, especially Boston Logan? Depending on who you talk to, the 9/11 Truth Movement basically started as a result of the September 11th victims' families who got the ball rolling, lobbying the U.S. government to carry out an investigation into the terrorist attacks, resulting in the formation of the 9/11 Commission, based on many unanswered questions on how their loved ones perished, warning signs, and what government could have done to prevent it. Consequently, also as a result of the Joint House Inquiry of Senate Select Committee's investigation, previously known as the JIS report. But the 9/11 Commission, having released their report in July of 2004, have been met with scrutiny, being rejected by most victims' families and a great chunk of the American public, if not the world. But those dissenters of the official story, galvanized by the 9/11 Commission report, are, for the most part, taking great issue and concern only with what truly happened to the Twin Towers, making the shocking proclamation of calling it an inside job, the World Trade Center, 9/11. But inside job was not a phrase coined afterward or by the 9/11 Truth Movement regarding the September 11th attacks. Rather, it was invented on the evening of 9/11 by Boston's WBZ-4 with Joe Bergantino, already in prime position for the early stages of the investigation covering Logan Airport.
Now, hundreds of federal investigators have descended on Logan Airport trying to determine just how those terrorists hijacked the 2 jets.
Our I-Team has been looking into security at Logan. I-Team reporter Joe Bergantino is here with the latest information. Joe?
Well, Sarah, what exactly happened at Logan Airport this morning is now the subject of a massive investigation. The head of Logan Security says the airport is, quote, as secure, if not more secure, than any other airport in this country. But a review of FAA action paints a very different picture. 2 years ago this month, the FAA revealed that security breaches at Logan were a common occurrence. The FAA found at least 136 security violations at the airport. Undercover FAA special agents posing as passengers found that security hired by the airlines routinely failed to detect test items such as pipe bombs and guns hidden in bags. Those same special agents gained access to airplanes parked at gates overnight. Agents frequently gained access to other restricted areas without ever being questioned. The government fined Massport and some major airlines $178,000. Now, one expert told me today that no airport in this country is secure. The problem, he said, the airlines are responsible for security checkpoints in the terminals. They contract security out to the lowest bidder, who in turn hires low-wage workers with no experience. Something else to consider. Tonight, one Bay State congressman is saying the hijackings at Logan were an inside job. Inside job. Inside job. Inside job. Inside job.
There you have it.
There you have it. That's what an inside job is. You have to consider, if you have all this access to make this operation, make everything work like you want it at the World Trade Center, well, you got to have that coordination with the planes. You know,
Bingo.
I mean, we could look before. I mean, I guess we don't need to get into Ahmed Rafai, but I was.
I mean,
don't know.
why don't we talk about it? I
Why
think that's
don't
a
we?
big issue.
Okay, but let's talk about it, because look, just show this.
Yeah,
show this
yeah,
picture.
for sure.
And a brief understanding of, like, we're not Islamophobes. We don't hate Arab people, but you know what? There are people of
My
those
stepfather was
ethnicity,
there.
they hate us.
Was from Jordan.
So the story of Ahmed Rafai is interesting because Ahmed Rafai worked for the fire department for, I think, was it 25 years or 30 years or something like that. And he basically lost his ID pass to the building that he was working in. And one fireman that actually
in 1999, it has happened in 1999.
okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
If you want to tell the story.
Well, I know you can get going because you're the one that actually got it.
Oh, that's
told us
all
about
right.
this, yeah.
But Ahmed Rafai was actually going to get a replacement pass because he claimed his pass was lost. Meanwhile, viewing the discussion between himself and this woman, and I forgive me because I forgot her name. Basically, she's in charge of issuing passes and to the building that he was working in. So there was this fireman named Ronnie Buka. Now, Ronnie Buka, who basically worked for the fire engine ladder, I think it was 149 in Manhattan.
Rescue One.
Rescue One, thank you. Basically got injured, and they called him the Flying Fireman. Because he was actually a daredevil. And what happened was that he was following the Ramzi Youssef trial very closely, and he used to go to the daily court hearings regarding Ramzi Youssef, Abdul and Omar Abdel Rahman.
Yeah.
And he went to the sentencing. And while the FBI shut the case closed, Ronnie Buka believed that the cell was bigger. But even when he did his own intelligence, and he was the first real truther, by the way, when he built his own investigation, the FBI didn't want to hear it. Well, fast forward to 1999, Ronnie Buka basically is semi-retired from the fire department due to a back injury. And he was witnessing this discussion and noticed that Rafai's pass, I think, was in his back pocket.
Yeah. They looked at security.
Look at
video.
security
The guy was
footage.
he found out that this guy's getting needing a new ID. He lost it, but then he's finding out from the coworkers this guy is BS, and he looks at security video and sees that this guy's actually got it. Finds out this guy is from Egypt, and he was really interested because he was really involved. He showed up at the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. One of his co-firemen almost broke his back too in the fire pit, and that's one of the reasons why that drove him to pay attention to all these things, Middle Eastern terrorism and stuff. So when he saw this, he became really, really intrigued by it. But when he also talked to his boss, Kay Woods was their name, right?
Oh, that's great. I'm glad you remember. That's right.
Yeah, Kay Woods.
Oh, just so real quick,
Go
just so
ahead.
everybody understands. This guy is an Al-Qaeda operative who infiltrated the New York City Fire Department.
Yeah, he's doing the accounting for the New York Fire Department. Okay, and Kay Woods tells Ronnie Buka, who's this is the fireman noticing this story. She tells him that one time right before the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, when we were in another office, we were their office is connected to all the city maps, all the city blueprints of all the major structures in Manhattan, right? Well, they were throwing out new maps because there were the old maps because they were revitalizing the system already in 1993 or before it. And he was seen by this boss digging through the dumpsters, collecting the blueprints of the World Trade Center. Okay. And the boss remembers, and he asked the boss, "Hey, can I have these? Is it all right if I take them? You guys are throwing them away, basically." She said, "I guess, sure, whatever." Well, this boss, Kay Woods, she says she even remembers that on the day of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, he called in sick, But anyways, Ronnie Buka hears this stuff, the fireman, and he starts finding out that the FBI has been watching this guy too. He would tell coworkers, that the feds are watching me. Well, no shit, right? So this happens, 1999 in September. It's really unusual. And you got to remember, this is like 3 months until the Millennium Plot. You know, that was going to be a big event. And
Right.
that could have been the day of 9/11. Prime, you know, Millennium, Bible Day, Doomsday, Y2K thing that would have been if 9/11 was on that day. So there's always that potential. But anyways, going, you know, Ronnie Bucca, you know, he shows up, you know, he shows up on 9/11 and goes up into the South Tower and reaches up to Fireman Oriole Palmer. Everybody knows who Oriole Palmer is because, you know, he kept,
Right.
because he got up to the hottest spot. You know, it wasn't enough heat to melt all this, to melt the building and bring it down and whatnot. You know, the claim. Ronnie Bucca made it all the way up there and died.
Nobody talks about Ronnie Bucca, by the way. Everyone talks about Oriole Palmer, but Bucca is often the most forgotten, but he's the most integral part because he's the link between 9/11 and 1992.
Yeah. And up until before 9/11, he was still visiting the Twin Towers, asking, you know, talking to the security there, like, are you guys sealed? You know, he's worried about like anything, any infiltration or anything going on even afterwards.
Right.
So, you know, we don't even know why he was even worried about that. He may have known something, heard something already, you know, who knows?
Right.
But the thing is, he was concerned of like, you know, obviously, you know, he knew they wanted to bring down the Twin Towers in 1993.
Right.
You need blueprints, especially if you got demolition ability, which yes, these Middle Eastern people don't think that only white man knows demolitions. No, the middle, you know, the third world countries and all around the world, you know, demolition is, you know,
Right.
a taught thing, you know, especially in the
Right.
military in the Middle East. And, you know, so you want blueprints, you know, you want to.
So, yeah, so
better
you
think
have
about
here
your,
you have a guy. Here you have a guy who infiltrated the New York City Fire Department, who was an Al Qaeda operative, who gained access to the blueprints of the World Trade Center. Yeah, we don't need, you know, we don't need any of that to prove an inside job.
Right. If
Evidently.
Arabs are patsies, that means even this guy's a patsy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So what
like,
about that, Richard Gage? But
what
anyways.
happens when you take this 60 exhibits into court, and which I support the lawsuit, by the way, because I think that right to petition question is important. But what happens when you take those 60 exhibits into court and the government presents their case, and they and you start saying, oh, you know, you start blaming the intelligence agencies, you know, just them, and you fail to explain how, and you explain to connect the hijackers, you fail to explain all these other nefarious characters, then the government's going to come in and introduce those characters, and your whole case is going to fall apart.
Right.
So I don't know what you're thinking. It's insane. You can either control. Here's the thing, and you know, I want you to understand, Richard. I'm saying this. You know, I want you to hear it. You have to control the connection between the intelligence agencies and the nefarious folks who actually did this, the hijackers, and all the other terrorist organizations who are involved, or the government is going to control that narrative. So if you get rid of that whole scenario, if you get rid of those other players, the government is going to eat you alive because they're going to take advantage of that, and they're going to start controlling that narrative, and because you failed to do so.
Yeah,
I think that's a great point right there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're not the ones dethroned. You know, we're not the. You know, you want the movement to grow. You want something to happen, and you may need to reassemble your package. You know, it's, you know, the Twin Towers. That's the whole thing. It's just, you know, it's not the package. It's part of the package.
Right.
You know.
And
Precisely.
Gage, we're not the enemy, Gage. We never were. And you never were the enemy either. You're just making it harder for us to prove our case about involving high-level government operatives, including the highest levels of the intelligence agencies, of withholding information from other agencies that Olivier says are all working together when they're not. Well, we could prove at least malfeasance and even foreknowledge regarding certain people within the CIA, maybe even in the NSA, and even with Saudi and Israeli intelligence. But if we don't have hijackers, all of those agencies don't exist because those operations don't exist because they were involving hijackers.
Yeah, and there's no reason to fake it. It's like you don't bring these people in. You don't do all this. It's like you don't
Right. You can't just
make
make
holes. You don't make up a story with holes, you know?
right. Richard, you don't just, because you asserted earlier that they could just make whatever they want up.
Yeah.
Well, no, they really can't. Because there are going to be people that look into that information. And if they see it doesn't exist, they're basically going to say, hey, wait a minute, this is fictitious.
This is the
So-
cost of Alex Jones's narrative, Richard Gage.
Right.
Do you want to be in that same, is this position what you want? Do you want to be banned from all of big tech? I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to sell energy supplements and survival goods too, to make, you need to think on bigger terms here, dude. We're all getting old.
Yeah.
I said about the
And,
Look, here's the thing. I mean, Richard, I've known you for years, and I've helped you out with a lot of the, helping out with
yes, he did.
filming some of the stuff with Ed Asner, God rest his soul. He lived only a few blocks from me, and I was there with your events when you came to LA and at the Garland Hotel there, and I remember that. San Diego, Broke Bread in San Diego, I remember that, and always been supportive of you. And but when you said that we don't need hijackers to prove an inside job, it was infuriating, because you just had a 10-hour conference a couple days before, dealing with a 20-year battle and 20-year fight about hijackers and planes and the Pentagon. And now, because it seems to be really darn good evidence that people are going to see now that there is actually hijackers and planes, now all of a sudden hijackers and planes aren't important. So it invalidates the entire conference and the reason why you have it. And it's also going to probably invalidate the entire 93 conference that you're going to have. And so I don't understand what your thinking is there, because you don't have it all figured out.
No.
And you neither do we. Not even close. The more we learn, the more we realize we don't know. And it's a much, much bigger story than what you can possibly fathom. So you got to get out of that echo chamber, and you say you're open, you say you want to learn, then do it.
Yeah. It's more than reinventing yourself. You better reinvent what you're going after on 9/11. Don't worry about reinventing yourself. You can't.
And I'll tell you something else, Richard. I mean, look, you might be. I get, you have a big following, you got a big voice, and there is that element of, if I go down this road, there's so many people who don't like Adam, and so many people don't like Nelson. They're abrasive. People don't like it, whatever. And then if you embrace this, especially me, whatever, me. If you embrace what Adam and Nelson are putting out, I can see you being worried about what would happen to your organization and what you're in your movement. But I will implore you, if you start embracing the truth, and seriously embracing the truth, no matter who's connected to it, no matter where it leads, not only are you going to, you might lose a few people, but you're going to gain so many more. And the people you gain are going to be much better quality.
Yeah.
This is why Adam is able to interview people like Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, Mark Rossini, Colleen Riley, people like that. I think some of them actually came to him because he was the one speaking some sense.
Yeah.
And they acknowledged that and they recognized that. They're like, hey, I want to speak to Adam because you're the one speaking about things that are important.
Or General Schwartz.
These people and the players are the ones. These players, the people who are involved, are the ones who are recognizing that. They're not talking to you, Richard.
Yeah. Alex Jones is not going to save you.
No, they're not talking. They're not talking to you. They're not asking you for an interview. And why would they? Because you're connected. You're associating yourself with the likes of, and I'm not trying to put down art or anything, but you're associating yourself with bad information.
Yeah,
or
Barbara Honegger being the main
misinformation.
one.
And
Barbara
yes,
Honegger.
yes, and so and that's a problem. So you're in a very difficult position, and I get it, man. Don't get me wrong. I totally see where you're struggling here, but don't lose sight. Don't lose your integrity.
She's not a whistleblower. I could tell you that. I'm not going to take this whole time to go after her. We can't, but she's not what she is. And I mean, you're not what you think she is.
It wasn't totally empty. They found a red bandana and a passport from one of the terrorists
Of course.
in the empty
Oh.
field. Although there was no plane there, but
What-
Of course.
Which
they
field
were
are you
able
talking
to
about?
find that.
Shanksville.
Huh?
Shanksville?
Yeah, Shanksville. Mhm. Yeah.
Because
Empty
they
field in Shanksville.
found other such evidence in the field outside the Twin Towers. I guess that wasn't a field.
Concrete
Yeah,
field.
They,
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they didn't.
Why didn't Art mention that they found a driver's license belonging to a Florida guy who was on Flight 93? I forget his name. They found the ID card of CC Lyles.
Yeah.
They found 25,000 pieces of mail.
Yeah. So how much DNA? How much human
They found-
remains? Was it
Well,
600 pounds?
8% of the human remains.
Yeah, it was like 600 pounds or something like
Yeah,
that.
600. Yeah, that's right. 600 pounds.
Yeah. And
So-
Ed, I mean, like you've covered this, you've researched this Shanksville very in depth. I mean, for how long were they even still looking for pieces? And how much have they recovered of Flight 93?
Oh, almost over 90% of it.
95, right? 95.
90,
right.
yeah, no, 95%.
So they
yeah.
found more pieces of this plane than any other.
But annually, they would even go out and do searches to try to
Right.
find
There
more
was
debris.
there was groups that would go out every single year, and they would do like green sweeps, and they would find more pieces of debris.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I don't get where our Olivier is basically saying that there's no plane. By the way, do I even need to bring up the residents of Somerset County who saw a plane crash in the field, like Paula Pluta, Eric Peterson, Kelly Levernight? I can name 16
Well, they're all like
more.
the Harley guy.
Yeah,
They're all
well,
the Harley
Mark
guy.
Walsh, right?
Yeah.
That claimed that he's a crisis actor. Meanwhile, he lived in downtown Manhattan.
Yeah. Yeah, he's out there to stage the narrative, but not Jerome Howard. Right.
Yeah, right. But Art Olivier is basically saying that there was no plane debris. They found two pieces of the engine. They found the both. This is the only plane where they found the cockpit voice recorder and the
Yeah.
flight data recorder.
Everything.
So they
Most
found pieces of this plane.
documented incident of any of the planes, as far as the hijackings and all that.
And if
Yep.
you
And,
can't,
and it's a great puzzle. That's the funny thing too. It's still
Right.
a puzzle.
if
And
you
it
can't-
also too, it had an 8-mile debris field. Yes, that's true. But flight 1771 that was had taken over and crashed in San Luis Obispo,
Yeah.
that too had an 8-mile debris field.
Yeah, and it's paper
It-
because it's
It's a
insulation.
very
stuff.
light insulation material that just got picked up by the wind and carried off.
And that's
that
what
was
they
what they
found
were-
8
that's
miles
what they
away
were
from
finding.
Shanksville.
yeah, they said it was nylon that they found for Flight 93.
Yeah. It was
Nylon.
So it's not like they found fuselage and
Right.
big
Yeah,
pieces
window.
of plane.
Right. So,
Right.
so finding a bandana and finding a passport isn't as surreal as you think it is, because light objects can basically survive an explosion.
Yeah.
A
Especially
human
at that
body is
speed.
not going to survive a 563 downward spiral with
Yeah.
with 78,000 pounds of fuel.
Yeah.
Not going to
when-
survive.
and what are you supposed to say now after the Chinese crashed this past
Oh,
weekend?
right.
I mean, not just the crash site. I mean, video documentation of that damn plane nosedive.
And they didn't even find big pieces of the plane either.
Nothing. It looks like Shanksville. It's reminiscent of Shanksville.
Yeah.
Straight down, and they didn't even go as fast as Flight 93, and it's still split like nothing's recognizable. Nothing. Doesn't look like a
I
plane.
think
Plane doesn't look like a plane crash.
They really wanted the plane to crash into the empty field. I mean, that would have been a spectacular video, images of this plane crashed all over this empty field and everything. But it just,
Well, how could it
was a
crash
mistake.
if they shot it
Just-
down?
Mhm.
You mean they were supposed to?
They didn't shoot it down. they were, oh geez, this is where Lieutenant Michael Penny's story comes into play.
Heather
Yeah.
Penny.
Yeah, Heather Penny. She was the her and her commanding officer were two F-16 fighter pilots who were scrambled to intercept the Flight 93. The aircraft were not loaded with any weapons. They did not have time to get the aircraft loaded with weapons, and the commanding just told them to get the aircraft up in the air immediately. So they took off, and the plan was to ram the aircraft with their jets. One was going to take the nose, and the other was going to take the tail. And the reason was because just in case one missed, he had the other one. I think that was the reason that she gave. So they were going to sacrifice their lives actually to take down this plane in case they had to, because they had no weapons on board. They didn't have time to load them. So now people want to ask, well, why wouldn't they just eject from their aircraft? Why would they sacrifice themselves? Because when you're trying to fly a F-16 fighter jet into another moving target like that in midair, you want to make darn sure you're in complete control of the movement of the aircraft at all times up until up until contact with target. So that's why. Fortunately, or unfortunately, whatever you want to call it, they were not able to intercept the aircraft, and it crashed before they got there. Now, the other thing is that it wasn't shot. The only reason it wasn't shot down is because a shoot down order was actually given by Dick Cheney. And one of the things that the entire 9/11 Truth Movement complains about, it was brought up in the 9/11 Commission hearings, and et cetera, was why weren't fighter jets scrambled, and why didn't they intercept the planes, and why didn't they shoot them down? So, well, a shoot down order was given. And again, I just explained that the aircraft that was supposed to intercept Flight 93.
It was over DC. The shoot down order was only for DC area.
Okay, all right. So the whole point is that if Flight 93 was heading to DC to hit a target, maybe the Capitol building or whatever, then it would have been a prime. I imagine it'd be a prime target for shoot down. But here's my point: is that because of the fact, if it was shot down, they wouldn't hide it. That would be something that they would actually say, we shot it down in order to save lives. It's unfortunate that the men and women on board the aircraft had to be sacrificed, but we kept the plane from crashing into the Capitol building or whatever. So that would be something that would be publicly acknowledged and not hidden away, because that was one of the complaints that we had. So it wouldn't make any sense for them to shoot it down and not tell us.
Yeah. They reported it days afterwards. They had the green light to do it, and they could have done it. And they were asked, and they, exactly. It's like, why would you say, like, oh yeah, we could have done it, but we didn't do it? I mean, yeah, it's just.
I don't know why nobody understand. Like this simple stuff, man. It's like you just think it through.
Yeah, it's not like this is like complicated issues either.
Right.
And it also lends to the fact that these are issues that are actually contradictory to the 9/11 Commission report. And you blame us for being too official narrative minded. Well, most everything we just said isn't in the 9/11 Commission report.
Yeah.
Shoot it down and then have it crash into the empty field.
Right. Yeah, because it was close. I mean, it was just just south of there. I don't know, maybe a quarter mile. I mean, it wasn't very far from the empty field. It was in the woods.
Seems like a crapshoot to me.
Why
not just guide it?
Yeah, because
they're in control.
Oliver believes the site was somewhere else. It's a completely different crash. He believes the Bolin theory. Like there's two crash sites apparently.
Right. Was it the other one, Indian Lake?
He's not. I guess it's somewhere else. It's something.
New Baltimore.
Yeah. No, that's where they said that's where they found paper and stuff.
Right.
I mean, why not just guide it down? And that's one of the arguments.
I don't know.
It's one of those made up things.
And
right. I know, but if you didn't have to do that, you could have, if you were in control of this
could
plane.
have just remotely controlled it and ran it right into the field. That would have been a lot cleaner.
Yeah, maybe they lost control of it somehow, and so then they had to shoot it down. Who knows?
What? Well, okay. Even
That
if they
makes no
shot it down,
sense.
what's the problem? If they shot it down, what's the problem? And why would they need to shoot it down if it's empty?
And why would they need to shoot it down if they have control over it remotely?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the biggest point of all. Right.
Yeah. What about the 12 people who saw the plane crash? What are they supposed to be? Crisis actors?
What about the spotter in the aircraft who was watching the plane and relaying the information?
What
to
about the
ATC?
radar? What about flight radar that was at Indianapolis ATC?
Yeah, I think we beat this from the death.
Right. Oh my
Yeah, I
God.
mean,
This is why we're going to have a conference on the Shanksville episode, so people a lot smarter than me.
What? Well, okay, Richard.
Well,
Ed just explained. Why would you need that conference if you have your mind made up already?
yeah.
and let's say you do have the conference. Who are you going to have to speak on it?
Yeah.
Are you going to
Ken
invite
Jenkins is the
Nelson
only one.
here, or myself, or
Yeah, I
Adam,
know.
or I would recommend Ken Jenkins, or he actually did he got a really good presentation about 93.
Yeah.
And so are you going to have those guys on? Because they have something important to say.
Yeah.
They have
He
a
can address
theory.
the phone calls.
Yeah, he can address the
We're
phone
ready to
calls.
do that.
Yeah.
We're salivating at the bit.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but that's true, right?
So
You
in fact,
just-
Richard, I want to ask you right here, right now, if we can present our side at your conference.
Yeah. With Ken
I want to
Jenkins,
ask
if
you
need
right
be,
now,
one of us.
it's an official request from you if we can actually present our side at that conference regarding 93.
I'd love to do it.
Mhm.
I'd love to do it.
He can bring
Mhm.
forth
Up against
the
the key
evidence
and
to
whatnot. Who cares?
Yeah, Christopher
put
Boland
it
did
on.
a really good job on researching what happened in Shanksville. You know, he went out there and he talked to the people.
Yeah, what did he
He
do?
does a really
He
good job on researching. It's just funny.
What did he do? He actually went there and he basically didn't even interview one eyewitness. He didn't interview Kelly Levenite or Paul
You can't
Pluka
trust
or
him.
Eric Peterson.
You can't trust him when he contacts like Pratt and Whitney or Rolls Royce engine or whatnot and tries to play it off that he spoke to an engineer or somebody
spoke to
there
a
when it was the
salesman.
parts guy.
Salesman.
Yeah,
spoke to
yeah,
the
salesman. Yeah,
salesman.
exactly.
Not even
Yeah.
affiliated with the
Yeah.
direct.
Once you
company
do
of the
that,
lab.
once you do that, you already know what kind of journalist you're dealing with. If you haven't put
Exactly.
that together, give me a break.
Exactly. So why would you actually take the words of a guy who basically creates his own information and subverts the
yeah.
truth movement by implying that everything 9/11 related is Jew.
Jew.
I don't get it. But hey, because he is against the official narrative, and we'll believe anybody who goes against the official narrative.
Oh, he's
Well,
not
you know,
even
there's-
good on the
he talked
Israeli
to, I
stuff
think
anyway.
Barry Hoover is his name, and his he had like a little cabin in the woods, and that was destroyed from the crash.
Oh,
And,
really?
Yeah. So he did it. He did a really.
Well, what crash? What are you talking about? There's no plane.
Sorry,
I
I
don't
think
get
this is
it.
the
See
extra.
what I
This is
mean?
the extra
This is
crash.
the
stuff.
thing
Yeah,
that
this
This is exactly where Richard Gage. Wait, Richard Gage should be like, wait a minute, what plane? You believe it was a missile,
right. Well, it was shut down.
right?
really good job on
The debris from the plane hit his cabin.
What plane?
What debris?
apparently
Right.
something. Yeah, something.
he talks
destroyed his
about it?
cabin.
Apparently something.
He wasn't in
Something.
Something. At the time of the crash, but yeah.
Nothing. It's something, but
I've
not
got
a
a
plane.
lot to
Yeah,
learn.
so-
So did he talk about this on publicly?
Yeah. So Christopher Boland has it on his. He has a page. It's called the Shanksville Deception, I think it's called. And
Yeah. I have
yeah,
an
you can
article
read it-
called
you
The
can read-
Boland Deception,
Yeah,
or I will.
right.
all the
No,
people that
and
he
this
interviewed,
is like the end right
in
here.
Shanksville.
All right. Now, that website, is it bolyn.com? BOLLYN.com?
Yeah, I believe so. Mhm.
Yeah, and it's basically Bolin has been defunct for the past 2 years. Nothing new, and that's what happens when you repeat yourself over and over again, and you don't learn anything new. Is that you don't bring anything new to the table? You suddenly run your usefulness, and nobody wants to listen from you anymore.
What is he
That's
going to
why-
cover?
Yeah, that's why Rebecca Roth and Christopher Bolin and Barbara Honegger, Jason Burmis, they don't bring anything new to the table. And so how many times can they repeat themselves before they become quite boring to the people that follow them? And then they go and try to find somebody else. Well, guess what? They're all being restricted from YouTube and Google altogether. And that's because the information that they're sharing is basically false and they're being, restricted. Now I'm against restrictions, but nevertheless, that's what's happening to these people. But if you could listen to someone like Nelson here, or maybe even myself, we're bringing something new every day. Every day we're uploading something. We're writing something.
Well,
We're
yeah.
uploading files or documents.
Every day.
Something every day.
Every freaking day.
And I hate to use ourselves as an example because we're not the type that pats ourselves on the back. But I could say right now, and I'm saying this out in the open, there's nobody in the world that uploads more stuff than us. And I'm talking about in the world because I'm like all over social media, for exception of Facebook. Nelson's much more prominent than me. And he's telling me that, dude, we're the only people doing something every single day.
Pretty much. Everybody gave up. You can't, you can't run 9/11 just as like some, carny sideshow, just something, just dried up, billboards.
It's an echo chamber.
Yeah.
It's just a straight up echo chamber is all it is.
That's all it
Rinse
is.
and repeat.
And that's
All it is. It will
Richard-
it will grow nowhere else. It will just dwindle.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen in time. And Richard,
It was-
the reason this is not like an admonishment video or a roast video to you. We're
Right.
trying to reach out to you. And the only way we could do it is basically try and do these like breakdown videos or critique videos and basically try and reach out to you and say, hey, listen, look what you're doing. You're doing more damage in the sake of the government. The CIA basically doesn't need to do anything. You're doing the work for them. They're basically clapping, hey, thanks a lot. We don't have to worry about a cover up because you're basically saying there's no hijackers. Meanwhile, whistleblowers like Mark Rossino, who I'm interviewing, is basically saying that the CIA basically withheld information from the FBI and the State Department about Al-Qaeda operatives living inside the United States. And they were involved with our 9/11 hijacking.
So the agencies weren't working together.
Right. As you could see, Art Olivier is wrong about agencies working together, and you're wrong, Gage, about planes not being hijacked. Meanwhile, I can actually name names, whereas you can't with your ground zero investigation. I'm already there. Nelson's already there. Ed's already there. We're waiting on you now.
Done that.
Now
yeah.
it's your
Been
turn.
there, done that. We've already been there, done that.
And now
We're
it's your
not,
turn.
We're not gone. We're still here.
So we're going to wait.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We're going to wait on you. We want to hear from you, not from anybody else. We want to know what you're interested in. If you want to keep going down the road you're going, you can go right ahead. But you're going down a road that has no light at the end of the tunnel. We have people which we can use to prosecute.
Yes.
You guys don't. Because if there's no hijackers, there's nobody you can blame for 9/11. You could say planes were remotely controlled. You could say they were drones. But guess what? You have to go to court and prove it. Good luck doing it, Richard, because you're going to be wrong.
The narrative you espouse already repels people. If what you're saying is as bad as it is, there's no hope. When a person already hears that, they're going to be, Bo Lenz even said it before. I saw it at his first time he came and spoke in LA. Like, yeah, he has this problem where, some people get emails, fans or people reading his stuff, but they're all scared to show up at his conferences or go anywhere because, these people are already freaked out. Like, oh, I think the government may know I watched Loose Change. You've created, it's self-defeating. That's why you don't have a movement. That's why you don't have anything. They are self-defeating theories. Period. I can't stress anymore. I mean, there's a lot I can stress.
Ed,
There's a
any
lot more
departing
I can
shots, Ed? Any
Yeah,
messages?
No, just like I said, man, I've known Richard for a long time and I respect him, but and I'm when I heard he was going on his own, I was really excited about it because I was like, oh, finally he can actually kind of break out and start looking at this other information. And it's like, and I
Not
just
even
see
doing
him
it.
going right back into the echo chamber again. It's like nothing new. It's just like and it's disappointing because he could have such a huge impact. And it's like, he's only having a huge impact on the same people he's been
He's
impacting.
not creating any
bad.
controversy. I mean, there's no
it's-
controversy. You need controversy.
Yeah,
to draw
that's the
some
thing.
attention.
It's like, and that's the thing. It's like you're gonna look. I was head of We Are Change LA for 5 years after Katie and Bruno had to leave, and when I started bringing up this type of information, the entire organization was destroyed because they didn't want to hear it. Not because I was wrong, not because it wasn't valid. We didn't even get to present it because that's how fixed they were in their freaking beliefs.
Yeah.
They did not want to hear it. And I don't want to be associated with people who can't change. I don't want to be associated with people who can't even confront data. Confront it, just confront it. And I can't be associated with people who can't confront. Where 3,000 people are dead, millions more dead because of a war, all because of this. And we cannot lose sight of that because that's who we're serving.
Yeah.
We're losing, this is not a popularity contest. I don't give a rat's ass who is who, doing what, as long as the truth is being pursued.
Yes. I think we need to cut it there because this is already too late already.
Yeah.
It's already
All right.
past
Now,
it.
Richard, the ball's in your court, sir, and we'll wait your answer.